Hello everyone, my name is Decker Link, the trained unprofessional, and this is my life from 2010 to 2019. We're about to reach the beginning of a new decade, and so I figured it would be prudent to kind of synopsize all of the various goings on, some of the big moments, the highlights and the lowlights of the past, I guess, 9 years, if it's 2010 to 2019. Just the aughts, not the aughts, that's 2000, the 20 teens. This is not going to be edited as much. This is my, I think, my first solo episode of all of the above in a long time, and there's not going to be any audience questions. There's not going to be anything like that. All that's really going to happen is I'm just going to kind of talk about it, and that's about it. I don't, obviously, as I'm recording in the house, I can't be loud and bombastic, but I also did just kind of wake up, so I did want to, I'm not feeling very, right now. I'm not feeling very explosive or expressive. This isn't going to be particularly interesting unless you really care about some of my personal history. So with that being said, I might as well go ahead and get started. Spoof is here with me, bringing me various socks of mine that he has decided are chew toys, and I can't make it into the laundry hamper from here, so he's going to continue to think of them as chew toys. Okay, so where was I at the beginning of 2010? Well, in that year, a lot of shit changed. I find that a lot of shit changed from every year, of course. There's very rarely a year where it's just kind of like, same old shit. I started 2010 by becoming a high school dropout. Spoof, stop. You're shaking everything. You're being an asshole. Yeah, I dropped out of high school in 2010, and I don't... Please stop. Spoofy, please. You're hurting me. I started high school at a place called Northern Heights High School. It's just outside the small town of Allen, Kansas. It's kind of it's closer to Allen, but it's in between the town I was living in at the time, Admire, Kansas, and Allen, Kansas. And that's kind of where all the small towns in the area would go for high school. When I went there, the main reason I regret ever dropping out is because I had a unique opportunity that year. Me and my brother are exactly 3 years apart, and him older. So, us being both into the performing arts, choir, and theater, forensics, stuff like that, that was the only year where we both could conceivably have performed together in a high school setting. And we had always done bits together and small things. Our relationship wasn't as good then. Relationship wasn't as good then as it is now, obviously, but we had been working on doing various bits for forensics, and we had actually performed in a play together my freshman year in the autumn 2009. he was a lead, and I was an extra. I was actually the bottom build extra, and that just happens because he's the senior. Seniors get priority, and I was new. I was untested. I was a freshman, so I get the role of the dude who shows up twice in the entire thing and has no lines. But there are pictures. I don't know if I have them on my computer here. Let me see. What's this picture of? Okay, that's just a picture of Mad Me. I believe there is a picture I have of me and Aaron at this performance. I don't know if I have it on my computer or not. I hope I do. If I don't, I need to find it. There it is. There we are. This picture is from 2009. Spoof, what are you doing? You got a bag or something? What's going on? Yeah, got a plastic bag. Nope, not letting you choke to death on a plastic bag. I'm sorry to ruin your fun. But no, this picture here is from 2009, and I am getting really tired of Spoofy being this attention-starved. I'll pet you, but stop hurting me. So, the gentleman on the left is my brother Aaron. During his... He had only grown his hair out for, I think, a couple years before this. I don't really remember, but this was during his red streak phase. I think he originally did it for a charity or something, but Lord knows I don't remember shit. But hi, Spoofy. Good God, can I not just sit here for a second? Go lay down or something. Please stop. And then I am the guy on the right there, doing my best acting. What this scene here is it's the first scene of the entire play. We're not even on stage. We're down where the crowd is, as you can see, kind of in the fucking right corner there. There's some dude's fucking face. Aaron is playing, not the fucking guy with the hat, but Aaron is playing a secret agent who has been sent to investigate a small town or some shit, and I am just some random citizen who was sitting there playing Sudoku in a school desk. It was my dad's real Sudoku book. I just sort of got it. And that's not even a costume that I'm wearing. That vest and shirt, that's just my regular clothes. I wore that vest almost every fucking day. That thing had to have stunk. I got a lot of bad shit in my early school years for having bad hygiene. Didn't really start getting that under control until a couple years later. But yeah, he would basically show up. He showed up. I think asked a question. I don't even believe I answered him, and he was like, "Oh, hold on, I gotta take this phone call. Wait here, because I might have to kill you." And then he just starts talking on this fake earpiece that we made. And that's my reaction to "I might have to kill you," which is, I believe the reason I made that face instead of a thing was, we used to watch a lot of comedy duo called Puke and Snot, and he was always Puke and I was Snot, and Snot had a lot of these faces. We listened to them more than watched them, and Lord knows I also just shit acting. I just did what I thought looked right instead of actually thinking about what actually looked right. But yeah, that's the only scene me and my brother ever shared together, because in 2010, the year we're actually talking about, we were both in forensics, and we were both working on doing a scene together. I think we were wanting to do Who's on First. And I succumbed, past tense of succumb. I couldn't handle the bullying I was getting. Now, the important thing to remember about high school me, at least Northern Heights high school me, is that I got bullied a lot in the small town where we grew up. I mean, we had less than 100 people in the whole fucking town, and that's if you include all the little farms and stuff. But for the young people, there's not like a fucking bar you can go to. There's not an arcade. I mean, there was an arcade, but like in a tiny town, like 4 gravel roads or some shit. It wasn't a place for young people to just sort of hang out or to go do something. So they all kind of clung to each other. They formed a lot of groups. And are you eating something? What are you eating? Oh, it's like a piece of yarn. Okay. And when none of the groups want you, everyone realizes you're not protected, and so you become an easy target. So not only that, but I didn't exactly have the best social skills, to put it in a way. I was belligerent. I had a very... I want to make sure that's yarn. Where are you going? Where are you going? What are you trying to hide from me? Yeah. Okay, yeah, it's just yarn. This is all the shit I edit out. He fucking does shit around me every time I record at this desk. I don't know why he thinks me sitting in a chair as opposed to sitting in the bed means playtime, but that's... I don't know. But I love the fact that he wants to be around me, and I want to be around him too. It's just, he's fucking 70 pounds, and this is a very... Okay, I don't know what just happened, but like my entire computer just froze. Guess we're just gonna keep going, eh? The recording's still going. Yeah. But yeah, there's a little rickety table, and he's like 70 pounds, so when he decides to fucking jump on me, it hurts. And when he just walks around under the table, bumping it around, it shakes everything. But, you know, I'd still rather him feel like he can be close to me than, you know, him being, you know, pushed away all the time. But yeah, I was a very belligerent and socially inept freshman, and every year before that too. I remember just having a false idea of what life was like. I also was just untreated for a lot of the mental problems I had. And I, a number of years later, had one doctor, the only one who's ever done this, diagnosed me as high functioning autistic. And I've had various family members and people close to me either say, yeah, that makes sense, or fuck that doctor, because they're just over prescribing, over diagnosing autism. And the thing is that people who knew me back then, back in my childhood, have an easier time understanding the idea that I would be autistic and that I've spent years trying to build up functionality. That's not me saying that the adjectives I described earlier about myself, belligerent and socially inept, are that's what autistic is. It's a way I was acting. I remember watching old footage of me and thinking, like, that looks like I have mental disorders. Like, it's not me acting all so random. Like, it would just be footage of me, like, talking or telling a story, and it would look and sound like someone who has some kind of disorder. And I've spent years trying to hone how I talk, and I obsess over making sure I get it right, and that I describe things properly, and that I become that I talk very thoroughly and descriptive. The problem is that I have since overcorrected, and now I'm having to work backwards, where I once did not communicate enough, or in a productive way, because I didn't communicate outwardly enough or explain enough. Now I explain too much and I ramble, and and everything to do with that, and that's going to take years of unpacking and work, but I am working on it. As you can tell by the fact that we haven't even gotten out of the beginning of the first year and we're already almost at 20 minutes. This is going to be a long one, y'all. And I don't blame anyone for not wanting to watch this. The views on this probably is going to be terrible, but yeah, that's fine. I don't do this shit for the views. I wanted to talk about this. I saw a tweet. I don't know if I mentioned this yet. I saw a tweet on Twitter, obviously. It's not very obviously. A lot of people take screen caps of tweets and share them elsewhere, but I saw a tweet where someone was like, "What happened to you in the past 10 years? What changed about your life in the past 10 years?" And some people were sharing like bullet pointed things that changed about themselves, and I was like, man, if I'm going to talk about what changed in my life in the past 10 years, I'm going to need to just talk about it. And I think it's healthy. I think it's good to have reflection like this, to have a moment to just sit down and go over things. Because when you're just going from thing to thing and never having a moment to reflect or to discuss or hash things out, you never really develop. You just sort of move. Speaking of moving, I dropped out of high school, and around this time, my mom was getting her nursing stuff all taken care of. Oh, I don't even want to know what that's about. Getting her nursing stuff, and so this year and the next year, or maybe it was just the next year, I don't know, but she was spending more and more time on her computer because that's how she was getting her certification back. She had been a nurse back in the day, but after 2 kids, she couldn't be, I believe she was like an ER nurse. So she let her license lapse and dedicated to being more of a homebody, and then when we needed more income, she couldn't dedicate the time to being both a mom and a nurse, and so she moved into like retail and stuff like that. But she started to develop these weird growths. To this day, I don't know how to properly describe these things. I'm gonna move my visor screen over here. I feel like that'll make it easier for me to look at the camera. Because even though this is a fucking podcast, and most podcasts have people looking at their guests or looking away, and I'm not even used to looking at the camera when I talk because usually I'm reading a fucking screen or something. I feel like I should do something. I'm also not like all up on the microphone like I would want to be to get the best sound quality, but I'm not trying to do anything that sounds good. That and my back really fucking hurts today, so if I'm gonna be sitting in this chair, I got the biggest, fluffiest blanket we have down here, and I've padded it all up. So now I'm sitting comfortably, and I'm just chatting with you. But yeah, my mom grew these weird growths. To this day, I don't know how to properly describe them. I don't know what the disease. I remember she said that there was a disease that sounded like it, but I don't remember what it is. My only memory of it is of not knowing what to call it. But essentially, it's pressure sensitive growths, if I remember how to describe this correctly, that grows on like muscles and bones or whatever. It just pushes outwards, and they're extremely pressure sensitive. And she was getting them a lot on the arms, so when we hugged her, we had to be careful where we hugged her at. And a lot of them like to grow along the spine. So that made movement very difficult for her, and so she was getting her certification online on her laptop, and remember she had this like pink laptop at the time, and we had this like little stand for and like in between classes, lessons, and learning, she was also playing RuneScape, and that's where she met people. I can't really discuss the past 10 years of my life without at least mentioning the fact that this is the decade where my parents not only separated but then later divorced. I separate the two because they happened years apart from each other. 2009 was the first year I remember it being bloody obvious what was gonna fucking happen. Because before that there was like fights or whatever, but there was no physical violence between the two. There was no there didn't seem to be any plan making, and this is all not only from the memory of a kid back then that was going through his own shit and who was quite obviously way more focused on what was going on with him, but also on the other end of parents who believed strongly that the problems they're having should not affect the quality of life for the kids. I would come to find out later that they weren't close for many of the years they were together, but they were dedicated enough to us and cared about us enough and loved us enough, me and my brother, to stick around while we went through the majority of school. My brother had graduated before my mom left. I don't want to say my mom left because she didn't. Saying my mom left is factually accurate. She is the one that left the house, and there's this whole big fucking kerfluffle about what happened exactly there. That is not the point of this. But it's not like she was leaving us. She left that house. She left my dad. And I would remain close to her. I'd actually wind up living with her. And then back and forth between her and my dad over the next couple of years, but we'll get to that. But 2009 was the first year where it was bloody obvious because she was making a lot of phone calls outside or in the car or something like that, where because in Admire we didn't really have good cell phone signal, so if you did want to make a phone call, you kind of had to make it outside. But the point is that we basically pieced it together that she was talking to people that she was romantically involved with. And so me and Aaron reacted to it in different ways, and I'm not trying to hash all this out on here. It's already been resolved. It's happened years ago, but that's when that's when I figured out that the way things were was not for long. So, yeah, so 2010 was the year where she started going to like clinical visits, and she would stay with my Uncle Tim, her brother, in a city halfway across the state. And so I was starting to get accustomed to her being gone for long stretches of time. Not in the sense that like, oh, I was forgetting about her or anything like that. Far from it. It was just like, it started to become less and less shocking when I didn't see her for whole days. And she eventually did get her licensure after summer break. So what for going back to the schooling, because I don't want to skip over this. I dropped out of high school, and my dad tried to homeschool me, but it's not as simple as, all right, we're a homeschool now. Apparently, there's like, obviously there's regulations for it and all this other stuff, and fees and all this other stuff that apparently we just didn't bother with. I remember him trying at one point, but I don't know. I don't really know what happened with the behind the scenes of that. But what homeschooling for me wound up being was us, pardon the dog, was renting various subjects of books from the library in Emporia, of algebra and history and books to read. I remember reading Tom Sawyer in homeschooling. I remember reading that and listening to Jimmy Buffett's Come Monday a lot. There's also what is it? There's another song that I remember closely tying to reading Tom Sawyer or Huck Finn. I don't remember. It's one of them is a sequel or a prequel or whatever. I haven't read them in a long time, and I didn't like the books. Now I'm fucked because I'm not wanting to edit this, but I want to know what this song is. Shiloh. There you go, Shiloh. I believe that's I have trouble distinguishing Neil Diamond from Jimmy Buffett. Shiloh was the one I remember listening to a lot when I was reading Huck Finn. No real particular reason why, as far as I know. But yeah, I also remember during this time I launched a channel that's gone now. It was called Jake TV Vlog, wherein my dad knew I liked making videos, and so he wanted to incorporate it into the curriculum. The curriculum was kind of hodgepodge. Like, I was reading Huck Finn. I needed to do a certain amount out of the algebra book. lessons in economics were trips to the grocery store and him pointing out how to find the best value for things. He actually taught me how to write a check, which I promptly forgot because we never wrote checks, but stuff like that. And then recess was him and his buddy going to play bowling. I don't know if I actually got to bowl then or not, but either way, Jake TV vlog. Essentially, it was you pick a topic concerning a subject in class that you're interested in. That he would approve the topic, and then I would have to make a video about it. And I remember, I don't remember the specific topic. I think it was about Cuba. And the video itself was terribly inaccurate. I had done there was pictures and all this other stuff. It was Windows Movie Maker and a webcam, but fucking some guy got on and commented this long ass thing where he was like, obviously you're just a kid, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, this is so wrong. And he was basically warning me about the dangers of misinformation and wanted to tell me more about it. But like I said earlier, I was a belligerent and self-important motherfucker at the time. Years of abuse from your peers will either turn you self-destructive or dead. Self-destructive or self-reliant, and I turned self-destructive. And so I was taking it personally, and eventually the dude was like, dude, I'm not fucking attacking you here, but your video is wrong. And he's like a professor in Cuban history or some shit, and he's like, you need to fucking either fix this or take it down. And so eventually we just stopped making the videos for it. It's really weird. Sometimes the webcam has like a freaky good frame rate, but then the quality still sucks. It's weird. But anyway, so Jake TV vlog and the homeschooling stuff didn't wind up working out. What eventually, and I don't honestly understand this myself, but eventually I got lonely. Now, that's a weird thing even now for me to try to think of, but I remember at one point laying it out to me like, at least when you get fucking bullied at school, you're getting to interact with people. And which is weird now because, like, now, if my goal is to be a voice actor with, like, a home studio and a homemaker that stays at home unless I have to do something to maintain the home or go out to an audition or something. Or to whatever. And so now I relish being home, but back then I did not. And so I straight up told myself, I was like, I would rather be miserable than lonely and bored. That was weird. I don't know what the fuck, but I think even my parents were like, really? Really? Because I remember the day in 2010 when I decided I wasn't going back to Northern Heights again. There we go. That pill is very floaty, so it's a little harder to take. You should take it with water. and it just floats. You're actually supposed to take that with food, but it is immediately preceded by a pill that I can't eat or drink anything other than water in that pill for 30 minutes to an hour after taking it. And so unless I wanted to sit next to food that I can't eat and wait for the timer to go and then fucking do it, I just gotta take it with water, and that's whatever. But anyway, I remember the day where I had just been broken up with, I think, from a relationship I was having with a girl that wasn't even at the school, but there was this whole situation with her and her half sister, and her friends were going to that school. And one day I was getting just absolutely shat on in PE, and I just decided to walk out. I walked out, grabbed my stuff, went to the office, called my dad, and said, "I'm never coming back here." Picked me up, took me home. Over the weekend, was like, "Are you sure you're not going back? Is there anything I can do to convince you to go back?" Because he wanted me to be educated, but I wouldn't do it. And so he's like, "Okay, then we'll make this work." And then, come August of the same fucking year, I went back to Northern Heights High School. Started my sophomore year. Technically, I did not start my sophomore year. Let me backtrack. Ow, fuck. Sorry, I told you my back really hurts, and usually I edit out any of that stuff. But because they didn't accept the credits I had gotten from my homeschooling, I had to take recovery classes on a computer. Not a computer at home, mind you. I had to go there, and for a class period, I had to go to a room with a bunch of computers, otherwise known as a computer lab, and take these classes that were like supplemental credits that were pass and fail. No passing on a D in this shit. You either passed or you failed. And I slowly became kind of close with the teacher that was there. I was the only kid in one of my fucking recovery periods, and so I got my work done a lot early, and so we wound up just chatting, and that was the first time someone told me that because I had started really working on my talking. At that point, I just learned how to be able to elongate a story. It wasn't engaging, but they were like, "If you ever worked at it, you could be in radio." I was like, "Hey." Just talking. But later that year would be the year that... Later that year, it was, I believe, winter. Or at least halfway through the first semester. Was when my mom finally did move out. And I was getting these two different stories as to what happened, and no one was telling me the full story because they didn't want to affect me and stuff like that. But I remember going and visiting her once. No, I didn't. What? I was in school. I couldn't fucking visit. She moved from Admire to Kansas City. Ow! God. And so we couldn't fucking just, like, walk down the street to see her. It was a fucking trek, and I was a fucking pseudo freshman, should be sophomore. I didn't have my own fucking car. So she moved away, and I remember I did visit her at some point, but it wasn't until the next year. Get out of there, man. We've got this cardboard box full of very important things, and he likes to try to sniff in it. Spoofy, come out here. I'm about to put up a fucking something to keep you from going under the desk, because this is getting goddamn ridiculous. You need to stop. I just don't want him getting in there and chewing up shit that's in the very important stuff box. Anyway, so yeah, so mom moves out at the end of 2010, moving into 2011. 2011 was the year that I moved out. Finished up my sophomore year, got my credits all in order to become a proper sophomore. This was the year where they really honed that Northern Heights. They really honed down a formula for me. Someone would, don't go under the desk, man. Don't go under the desk. Stop. Don't fucking bite me, man. Stop. God damn, you were doing so good. Go lay down or some shit. Spoofy, if you keep this up, you're gonna go in the fucking kennel. Jesus Christ. Too much to ask you, don't fucking bite my feet. I'm not kicking you. Ow! Okay, that was your claws. I get that. And I know exactly why he's doing this. It's because he likes playing in the blankets. And so since I'm wearing a blanket, he thinks that we're playing. Even though I've tried my best to discourage that. I don't like it when he plays with the blankets because he's ripped a couple sheets already. But, nope, it still keeps happening. Anyway. They really worked it out to a formula at Northern Heights where someone would fuck with me. I would be encouraged by family and teachers. I would say friends, but I didn't have it. Spoofy, for the love of God, stop. If I put my foot there, that doesn't mean shove it out of the way. You get one more shot or else I'm going to put you in the fucking kennel. I'm not playing around here, man. And this isn't even abnormal behavior for him. He is typically this just not willing to fucking do anything that I want him to do. And every bit of advice I get is like, you gotta put up boundaries. If he does something, you gotta make sure he knows that he can't do it. And I'm like, okay, how? He doesn't know English. Some people recommend a firm smack on the booper, which I don't fucking want to do. Some people recommend scolding. They seem to respond well to that. I don't know. Usually, I just fucking light shoves. Not like whoosh, but like no type of thing. Like right now. No. You more like put your hand and go no. That speed, that force. Oh my god, really? Well, pardon me, I'm getting a fucking phone call now. Alright, sorry about that. My manager was calling me about some shit at my store. Everything's good though. Everything's fine. Going back to it. So, they had it worked down to a formula where they would fuck with me. My family and teachers, the ones that gave a shit, so more like one that gave a shit, would tell me to bring it to the counselor. An asshole who, no joke, at one point told my dad that there's no way that I was getting bullied as much as I was because high schoolers aren't interested in bullying people. They're just interested in sex. So apparently, if you ever bullied in high school, you weren't. Just didn't happen. They just doesn't make any scientific sense because one fucking piece of shit sort of counselor that was really just a bodybuilder that couldn't fucking commit just decided, nah, all high schoolers want to do is fuck. And yeah, high schoolers do want to fuck, but that doesn't mean that shitty people stop existing because they're horny. Stupid. But anyway. So yeah, I would bring it to the counselor because that is the only thing I could fucking do. That counselor would call in the person, get them out of class in excused absence so they wouldn't have to deal with whatever they were doing in that class. They would sit in his office and talk about sports or some shit. He would be like, did you do it? No. Alright, I'll keep you here for the rest of the hour. So, did you see that game last night? And that'd be it. So they would get out of class scot-free. No repercussions would ever come to them. And it would just keep happening that way. But, pardon fucking the dogs upstairs. There's so much annoying shit in this house. But, wow, microphone is really picking them up. But, make it to the end of the year. I make it to the last day of my sophomore year. And they fucking... I want to yell, but I fucking can't. I have no place to. What winds up happening on my last day, get about halfway through the school day, right? And what winds up happening is I'm having a class period with another girl, a girl I had met when I changed middle schools. And we're doing some... I don't remember what the fuck we were doing. I think we were playing like a game, like a card game or some shit. Because it was the last day in our history class, I think. What wound up happening was playing with these cards or whatever the shit we were doing. One of them falls. I go to bend down, pick it up. I accidentally fucking... I didn't hit her, but like... I go to reach because I'm trying to catch it, and I wind up like smacking her knee. I'm like, oh, sorry. She doesn't make a big deal of it. She's like, oh, whatever. I pick it up. We continue playing. A couple more class periods pass. I get called into the office. Principal tells me that he has been informed that I inappropriately touched her leg in the middle of class. Now, the insinuation there is that I was fucking like groping her or some shit. Literally all I did was, oh shit, sorry. And then let's move along. But apparently she had told some of her friends that something else had happened. Either she fucking lied or her friends made a bigger deal out of it or some shit. I don't fucking know. I don't fucking care. I haven't talked to any of these people since. But when I was brought in, the principal says, we were told that you inappropriately touched her leg. Now, did you make contact with her leg? Now, notice the framing there. He's not asking, did you grope her? Did you hit her? Did you touch her inappropriately? What he asked, was there any contact between me and her leg? And yes, there was, because I accidentally fucking, while trying to catch some card, I don't remember what the fuck, I think it was a card, I don't know, trying to catch a card that fell off this tiny little school desk we were playing on, I accidentally slapped, not even slapped, it was just like, whatever, like I nudged her knee. But since he asked, was there any contact made between you and her leg? I was like, well, yeah, but there's more to the fucking story. And I try to explain it to him, and he's like, I don't need to hear anything more because you didn't deny it. And it was the weirdest thing. Because you didn't deny it. What if I had just said no? If I just fucking lied. If I just said, no, I don't even know what the fuck. Would I have just gotten away with anything? I don't know. But because I said, well, yeah, because I was trying to do this thing and I accidentally nudged your knee, he was like, well, you said there was contact, and so can't let you go back to class. I was like, what do you mean can't let me go back to class? It's like, well, I've got to keep you here for the rest of the day in school suspension. Like, what the fuck, really? And he was like, go ahead and he was like, I'll ask the secretary in the office to go to the library and pick out a book for you because it's the last day, you don't have any homework to do, and you'll just stay in here the rest of the day. And so, being so shook up, it's like I'd never been suspended before, and it really wasn't even a proper suspension. He just didn't want to deal with anything because the principal at the time was this fucking dick cheese who I'm pretty sure was prostituting his children. He was just like, I don't want to fucking deal with this. So I'm like, I asked for some book, I don't even remember, and I go to sit down at the suspension desk, and I'm like, what the fuck just happened to me? I just got fucking accused of some shit, got basically tricked into admitting to doing something I didn't do. And because of this, I'm missing out on attendance credits and gonna have to sit for hours in this fucking room? Fuck that. And there was a phone right there. So I called my dad. I was like, get me the fuck out of here. Again. And so he came and picked me up and I left. And that was it. But that, I remember all of that so vividly because I'm still annoyed by it. I'm not mad about it, but I'm annoyed by it. Because the only, and this is going to sound fucking like whatever your opinion is of people who value their academic record in high school, but every other ending grade I've ever had for a class was either an A or a B. Because I wasn't there for the last period of school that day, which was my English class, and I couldn't turn in my AR points, which if you didn't have AR essentially was accelerated reading. You had to read a certain amount of books per semester. Every book had an AR score attached to it based off of the level of difficulty of reading level. Please get out from under the desk, Spoof. This is ridiculous. And I had more than met my goal, but they were turned in at the end of the year to be calculated into your overall participation score. But because I wasn't there, I couldn't turn in my AR points, and so I got a C in that class. Literally every other semester over the 2 high schools I went to, it's either an A or a B. When I went to the second high school, which I'll get to in the later half of this year, the 2011, I would eventually end every quarter, not just every semester, every quarter with an A in every class I was in. But 1 C. And so I was not able to Super Mario RPG. I was not able to apply for scholarships. I was not able to get whatever because my fucking GPA got fucked. It got absolutely fucked by this. And it's absolute shit. It's absolute shit that's what happened. But yeah, that's what happened. I figured I'd put the year up so that I had a little bit of extra help in remembering where the fuck I am. But anyway, so that was May of 2011, the last day of that school year. That year, I would turn 16. Spoofy, please, get out. Jesus Christ, man. Like, why is the day where I'm in a lot of pain the day you decide to be all over me? This is fucking ridiculous. Anyway, so turn 16, and I get an offer from my dad to accompany him on a long ass road trip over the summer. Because he's got to go down and basically, I believe, yeah, we're basically going down to Florida to basically visit and then pick up my great granddad, who we just called Granddad, at his trailer home in Florida. Fort Myer, if I remember correctly. Fort Myer. So I was like, beats sitting in this fucking trailer with no air conditioning for months. So that night I wanted to go on a road trip with my dad. Aaron had gotten to go on a similar trip with my dad before, but instead of driving down and back up, they took a plane down and then drove up. And I didn't want to go on a plane. Aaron got sick on that flight, if I remember correctly. I wasn't there, but if I remember what he told me. But we drove down, and I was fine with that. I'm totally fine with that. I was cool about it. And turned out it was helpful for my dad, too, because he was also going, I believe, I don't know if he started this year going back to school, doing online credits to try to get a degree, but he was at least doing them at the time. And so there were a lot of times where, while we were visiting my granddad, he would need to go to the library to go to a place that has internet. My granddad had no fucking use for the internet, to do some classwork. And so that's also where I would be uploading videos. I was editing in the van and while I was at the trailer, because why would I bother visiting with my granddad, right? Missed opportunities, but whatever. So, I went on this road trip with my dad, and I got to almost drown in the Gulf of Mexico a little bit. That was fun. Sorry. And it turned out to be kind of like a finale of sorts for a while of my time spent with my dad, because not long after I got back, the youth group at the Admire Methodist Church was having a trip to Worlds of Fun. And while I wasn't friends with any of the people going, I want to go to Worlds of Fun. Might as well. And it was a good excuse to visit my mom, who lived in Kansas City, about, I'd say, a 30-40 minute drive from Worlds of Fun, this big theme park in Kansas City. And so I'd get to visit her, go to this thing. And I'd been talking with my mom for a while. I had reached out to her, and we reconciled and talked things through about her being gone and her being with someone new and all this other stuff, and got it all figured out from a distance. But ow, fuck, shit. It's okay, Spoofy. I know I'm being loud and in pain, but I appreciate your sympathies. You want kisses? Oh, the kisses. But yeah, we had discussed, because I fucking hated living in Admire. The only good thing about living in Admire was when I had childhood ignorance and familiarity. That was about it. Because my relationship with my brother wasn't great at the time. It wasn't terrible, but like we didn't hate each other, but we had our fucking fights. And then of course living with a nuclear family that did not get along quite often really only is a benefit when you're not thinking about it. But the area sucked, the house sucked, my peers sucked. So when the prospect of moving from Admire to Kansas City, oh, really? I would have to move out of the house I had lived in for the entirety of my life up until that point, to instead move into a one-bedroom apartment with my mom and her new boyfriend. Gotta hang now. Ow. Didn't get it all. But, no. Get off. Get off. I'm putting my foot there to keep you from going under the desk, goddammit. Don't fucking climb on it. Basically, the idea was that I'd move up, they'd write out their lease, find a 2-bedroom apartment, we'd move into that, and I'd attend high school up there. And that's essentially what wound up happening. We arranged it over the summer, we got everything moved, and I remember I had this desk, this really old, small desk. It had like the little round cover that you could pull down. And we tried to shove all of my life's belongings, all my earthly belongings, into the bed of a pickup truck, and that desk wound up collapsing under the weight of my mattress, which was positioned straight up for some reason. I still don't understand where the logic was in that. But, that's whatever. So I didn't have a shit desk. Spoof, I said stay out of the fucking under the desk. Please. Spoofy. Stop. Jesus Christ. It's not like I have a fucking... I don't have anything I could put here to keep you out. Maybe some Aldi bags. Maybe stack some fucking Aldi bags. Would that be enough to convince you that this is not a walkway? It's not the most sturdy fucking fortification in the world, but it's at least there. It's made of mass. Like, how many times do I have to fucking say no? Spoofy, for the love of mud, stop. Like, I'm just trying to do something, and like, I'm not trying to do anything complicated here. So why is it getting fucking ruined so goddamn much? Like, it's so hard for me to just sit in one place and talk. How are you making that more difficult? Fucking ridiculous. This is fine. This is fine. If you want to hang out, I'll pet you. Kisses? You gonna bite me or you gonna kiss? You wanna kiss? Okay, he's just gonna hang out. That's fine too. But, so, packed up all my earthly belongings in the back of a pickup truck. Got it driven up to the 1-bedroom apartment. All my stuff was in a corner. And I slept on the floor for a number of months. And that's when I really started to meet... Because I had met I don't want to use his name because he's not in the picture anymore, but I don't have nice things to say about him. I'm gonna call him. Oh no, I don't want to. I don't want to say that. I'll call him asshole. Fuck it. So asshole. Um, asshole was 10 years older than I am. My mom is 30 years older than I am. Objectively speaking, good job, Mom. Landing a young stud like that, but at the same time, he was a fucking prick. In many ways, did not like him. He had a shit attitude, and took years for us to get to an understanding with each other. But it did not happen while I was ever living with them. There were even a couple of times where we were fucking screaming at each other, and that's not pleasant at all. Especially when I'm sleeping on the fucking floor in a corner, you know. But, positive about this time period, August 2011, was when I started at Shawnee Mission North High School. And night and fucking day is Northern Heights High School and Shawnee Mission North High School. I was... First of all, there was some false expectation here because my mom was making out to be like this posh, fancy, fucking rich kid school. It's not. Shawnee Mission North is a fine school, but it is regarded as the ghetto school in the district. And it's in fucking Kansas City suburbs. There's no ghetto in the district, but that is the lowest income area of the district, of the Shawnee Mission district. So, me showing up with a button-up shirt and khakis on my first day, I was like, I am not dressed appropriately. Every time after that, I wore comfortable clothes. But, you know, this was the year I really wanted to, because I was moving out of a fucking, I haven't really described the house in Admire. I've shown it a couple of times on videos in the past, but it was this raggedy ass double wide trailer, really old, no insulation, no air conditioning, no heat, no floor practically. Parts of the ceilings were missing. There was so much mold in the fucking shower you could probably cure a whole new disease with it. But needless to say, everything was dingy, dirty, smelly, and gross. And so that is part of the reason why I really just didn't give a shit about my hygiene, because it was like, if I wanted to be clean in this place, I would have to wash up somewhere else and every fucking day, because there was no fucking way. But so when I moved out, I was like, I'm showering every fucking day. I'm showering and brushing my teeth, and I'm doing everything, because I was like, I'm not living like that again. Eventually I'd kind of relax a little bit on it to move to showering every other day. And now I pretty much, I can go 2, maybe 3 days without showering, but like at the third day, I'm like, I hate myself. And if I'm going anywhere, I'm showering. I'm not going out 2 days without showering. Even to the store, I'm not fucking grossing myself out here. Okay, this is painful now. You're hurting me. There we go. And funny thing, so there was this guy on my school bus, lived in the same apartment complex as my mom. I have nothing but positive things to say about him, so I'll use his real name. His name's Brandon. And ow, my God, dude, stop. When I when I first was realizing I was moving up to Kansas City, I was like, I'm not going to know anyone. I'm not going to have any use for some of my social stuff, one of which was my Yu-Gi-Oh! Card collection. I had a good stack and some good cards. But I was like, I'm not going to know anyone. I'm not going to have anyone to play with these. So I gave them to a kid who I barely knew and was not at all interested in my cards. Then I moved up, and going home the first fucking day, I'm talking to Brandon, and I'm realizing I skipped a very important thing, so I'll be going back to that. But like the first fucking day, he's like, "So you play Yu-Gi-Oh?" And I'm like, "God!" I remember even trying to message that kid I gave my cards to on Facebook, being like, "Hey, can I have my cards back?" But like, he never responded. Oh God. I forgot. A little bit of a touchy subject, literally. So like the week before school started. I'm not backtracking far here. My mom's apartment complex had a swimming pool as part of the clubhouse area, recreation area. It actually had an outdoor pool and an indoor pool. It's like, holy shit. So one day, I take it upon myself. I'm like, I fucking want to go swimming. You know, the pool's not going to be open much longer, so I might as well go. So I go swimming. And I'm just sort of floating around in the deep end. People are playing by themselves. I'm not bothering them. They're not bothering me. And this guy shows up with a couple of his friends. Kind of a skinnier dude. You know, shapely in a couple of places, but overall kind of skinny. Long hair. He was a cute looking guy. So, just oh, hey, look at that. I'm not thinking anything of him, other than the fact that he was cute. He starts playing with some of his friends, and some of the other people in the pool start joining in with a ball. They're doing the catch, poo, with a volleyball, tossing it back and forth. And so eventually it comes down to the deep end, and so I'm like, oh, hey. And then with that, I start to slowly get involved. Now at this point, I should mention there's some little kids around. I mention this not because anything terrible happens to them or anything, but it explains a comment that gets made. Spoofy, please. I notice on the cute guy's arm, there's a tattoo of a rainbow flag. And I know what that means. But I was acting stupid and decided to, oh, what does that mean? And the dude said it was because he just liked rainbows. And I was like, oh, okay. Later on, the night goes on, the kids leave, and it's pretty much just me, that guy, and his two friends that are off basically fucking in the corner. So I'm playing catch with the cute guy now. And he tells me that the flag is because he is gay, but he didn't want to mention that in front of the kids because he knows some people have sensitivities. We were in Kansas after all. I was like, oh, okay. And at that point, I had already had a boyfriend and a very bad breakup with him and experiences. So I knew that I was bi, but I didn't know that there was a thing called like a lean, because I was more attracted to ow my god, leg cramp. Are you fucking kidding me? Everything is trying to make me not do this thing. Spoof, get out of there. I'm having a leg cramp. Please leave my leg alone. Spoofy, I swear to God, get the fuck out of there. I'm gonna fucking explode. This is ridiculous. I'm literally just trying to talk. I'm getting phone calls. I'm getting leg cramps. The dog is trying to destroy me. What the fuck is happening? This is goddamn ridiculous. Anyway. So, And of course the fucking heater is on, and so the little tink tink thing that's happening that no one has a proper explanation for is just gonna happen there, and I just itch the inside of my nose, but everyone's gonna be like, oh, you picked your nose. But anyway, I knew I was bi, but I didn't know there was a such thing as a lean, so I was very like, what am I here? And we start basically flirting with each other. Now, at this time, I should mention, in Kansas, it is legal past the age of 16 for you to have sexual relations with people. You can't document it, though, until you're 18. I was 16. I was legal. However, this guy was like 27. I wouldn't realize it until years later, but this... Apparently, it's not just like, you're 16, you can fuck anyone. It's 16, you can fuck 16 and 17-year-olds. But 18-year-olds, you gotta wait. And whether you think all of these various things or whatever you think about sex laws in general, the point is that a 16-year-old and a 27-year-old are on two totally different developmental levels, on average. And so I didn't realize it because I was just wrapped up in the idea that this cute guy thought I was attractive. We started flirting with each other. We started light petting in the pool, and he invited me to the showers. I happily obliged, and we got to the shower, and we had experiences. I felt so dumb in this, because it really showed how little I knew about sex at the time. I was very enthusiastic, but I had no actual understanding of it. Because we got to the shower and we started with a blowjob. It was my first proper blowjob that I've ever received, and I was already embarrassed because the size differential was ridiculous. Like, I'm not a small dude down there, but he was like porn star level. Like, it was ridiculous. But I felt so dumb. When I finished, I couldn't stand. I was so like, oh my god, that I had to sit down. And he was all worried. He was like, oh shit, are you okay? Like, what happened? And so I have to sit down on the bench, and I'm like, I think I need to go home. I think something's wrong with me. And so this fucking guy, who's expecting, you blow me, I blow you, we fuck, there you go, casual encounter. All of a sudden, he starts it with, he blows me, and then I almost have a heart attack, which I did not have a heart attack. I was just really weak in the knees. I had never been blown before, and this guy knew what he was fucking doing. In more ways than one. So I eventually went home, and I showered, and I remember filming a fucking video, because at the time I was doing one of my many attempts at a daily vlog. And I filmed a video after I got out of the shower where I said that, I met someone special at the pool and we had fun, and it was dumb. And then later on that night, he would text me. He's like, yeah, my friends locked me out of my fucking apartment. Do you want to, like, hang out or something? Because he was just visiting their apartment. He wasn't actually a resident there. So, like, okay. I had calmed down, whatever, so we went back to the clubhouse. It had closed at that point, so we couldn't go inside, but we could hang out at the place outside. And we're chatting and sharing stories and make out a couple times. Then we go to a secluded area, and I do another dumb thing where I'm heavily implying to this dude that I want to do something sexual with him. And he is getting hints that I'm not sending. Because we get all the way out there. It's just the fucking mini putt course. It's not really hidden, but it was dark and there were some trees. Get up all close to him. We're kissing and whatever. Then I turn around and I just pull down my pants. And he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, pull him up. I'm nothing. I'm sorry. And he was like, "Well, first of all, I thought you were gonna blow me. And I was like, I can't. I've got this like particularity about mouth stuff. I've tried and I've convinced myself that, with proper cleaning procedures, I could, but I can't do mouth stuff. She was like, so I explained that to him, and he's like, "Oh, that sucks, but as far as what you were trying to do, we don't have a safe place right here. We don't have lube. This is all kinds of not. This would not go well if we actually tried what you were suggesting." Yeah, he was like, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm sorry." Because I had done stuff in that area with my first boyfriend, but we didn't use any lube or anything like that, so it was not great. Jesus, inexperience. But anyway, so when I first experienced that, and in some of the years to follow, I would think of that as a positive experience, and later on I would come to be convinced of and realize myself that was straight up statutory rape that happened to me. And while it was not nearly as bad as it could have been, and while I don't yet know of the fact, I don't know whether or not that guy had the intention to do that. I think he was just looking for a casual hookup. That is what happened. Legally speaking, that's what happened. I never saw him again. We never texted or called or anything like that. But that is what happened. Anyway, so school starts, and I'm learning social skills. I'm in a class called, I think, Actors Studio, which was dumb, but it was theater, and I wanted to take a theater class, and that was the only one I could fucking get into. And so I also wasn't in a choir class because I don't know why I wasn't in a choir class. I just had bad experiences with a choir at the previous school, but I was like, maybe I just couldn't. Oh, I think it was because all the choir classes you didn't have to audition for were in blocks that I couldn't fit in. So figured it out. But in the actor studio class, I would meet someone who I would go on to have an on again, off again, and then on and off, and on and off, and on and off, and on and off again friendship with, who now we are, it's off, and there's no plans for it to be on again. But he's been on this channel before. You can find videos where his contributions are in them, so I don't feel like I have to avoid it. His name is Dan. And I'm not going to be saying anything negative about him in this. You know, we were in high school and our personalities just, at least at that point, did not mesh. We tried. We gave each other a lot of fucking chances. And to his credit, he was the one that reached out to me. Because I was the new fucking kid in the class. And we were given a project to do in a team of people. And I'm sitting in the back, keeping to myself. And he's like, alright, who... And he gets asked, like, who do you want to be on your team or whatever? And he immediately turns around, looks at me and says, I want that guy. Now, I had a couple of funny lines here or there, but I really hadn't come out of my shell. I wasn't trying to do voices, whatever. I had decided in 2009 that I wanted to pursue voice acting, but I hadn't really actually dedicated to it. And I wasn't socially adept, so I was still figuring things out. But I would come to find out later that apparently Dan just had a feeling that I was someone that he would want to get to know. And we would be on and off friends for fucking years after that, for like 7 years. So, yeah, that was cool. That was actually really cool because I was so used to, for everything, being the last person picked, and like immediately it's just like, I want him because he seems like a guy I'd want to work with. And then we started doing videos together for the class, and eventually we'd get to know each other. We would both get cast as various roles in a play because I was doing acting there, and I wanted to get into the plays there because Shawnee Mission North has been ranked at one time the #1 high school theater program in the entire Midwest. Now, that is something that is changed every fucking year, and it wasn't the year I was there, but the years I was there, but highly esteemed theater program. So I wanted to get a part of that because I liked acting. I still do. So I auditioned for a musical called Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And at this time, I was also in another class with another guy who I'd be friends with named Sam. And he knew I wanted to get into choir, but I told him about my scheduling thing, and he was like, talk to Solly. He kept saying, talk to Solly. She'll figure it out. I was like, who the fuck is Solly? Patrice Sollenberger was the choir director at the time, nicknamed Solly. And I never wound up talking to her about it until I auditioned for Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And I did my audition, which part of it was doing a singing audition. And I did my bit. We did the rest of the auditions. I was saying part of the audition was singing the national anthem, I think, because it stretches your vocal range. I don't know what he's doing, but he's right there. But after the auditions were done, we're wrapping up, and Solly came up to me and was like, what are you doing 6th block? I was like, right now it's whatever the fuck it was. Next semester it's journalism. He's like, I want you in my choir class. I'm like, did you have to audition for these classes? Well, isn't that what you just did? I was like, well, I was auditioning for Joseph. Yeah, I'm the choir director. I heard you sing. I count that as audition. I want you in this choir. I was like, well, shit, okay. So in my first audition, I got cast in Joseph as a minor role, but a named role. I got cast as Jacob, who is Joseph's father. And so I was in a couple scenes. And I also got put into the second highest choir in the school. So that was cool. And during this time, During this time, I would also be pursuing a lot of different people romantically, and it just never went well. Did a lot of various school stuff. I was in debate, I was in choir and video production and all this other stuff. And I'm getting to know people. Through Joseph, I also wound up meeting my good friends Joel and Nate and so we're going along, and then I get into my first long-term relationship since moving to Kansas City. And that relationship did not end well. It was not a healthy relationship for either of the people involved. And I'm not going to be going into it. But the point is that I was much more socially active in various ways after I moved to Kansas City. There's even a moment where I had... it was during, I believe, Actors Studio. I think we were helping set up the stage for Joseph, maybe even. And I was moving something and I accidentally ripped my pants. Oh, the embarrassment. It was whatever. I needed new pants, so I was wearing some stuff from Lost and Found that was too small, but it was whatever. I called my mom, but she, at the time, was working like 12-hour shifts at the fucking hospital since, like I mentioned, she got her nursing license. So if I called her, she was likely either at work or asleep. Either way, she didn't fucking answer. And the only other person I fucking knew that could drive and had access to my clothing was my dad. And he still lived in Admire. So I called him. I was like, hey, I ripped my pants. I need pants. Please, pants. And so, at the time he was visiting my granddad, who at that point had moved up to Osage City, which is a town that is kind of on a path between Admire and Kansas City. It's not halfway or anything, but it's on a path you could take to get to Kansas City. And she was like, well, I'm kind of close. So he and my granddad actually came up to bring me my pants and to see me at school. And my dad remarked while I was there that anytime he'd ever come to see me at school or in general beforehand, because at this point I was living with my mom and not my dad, and so I was dealing with a lot of separation problems, and we hadn't seen each other much because we don't really have fucking money to come visit all the time, and I didn't have a car, so I couldn't get down to visit him. Anytime he had seen me beforehand, I always had my head down, not looking at anyone, just keeping my eyes on the floor, very to myself. And when I came to the office that day, my head was up, smiling, moving like a person does. You know, people move like this. And that was only my first semester there. I was actually at Shawnee Mission North for 2 years. My junior and senior year. And that actually brings us to the next year, which is 2012. So let's bring up the next year here. I'm going to need to really kick it up a notch with the speed of telling this shit, because if I don't, I'm going to be here for like 6 hours, and nobody's going to watch 6 hours of me rambling about shit that is not at all interesting. But again, I don't do it for the views. I'm basically just doing this, one, in case anyone's interested, and two, because I think it's good for me to reflect and to go over stuff. And because I fucking wanted to. Yeah. So anyway. Going into 2012, at this point, we had moved into the 2-bedroom apartment, and I'm getting closer with my new group of friends, which at this point was mainly Dan and Nate. Sam was there too, and a guy named Zach, who eventually wound up moving away. And of course, I had my video production group, which wasn't all friends, but in there. I was also in choir, in debate. I had friends there. I was getting friends for the first time. It was crazy. And Caleb, actually, I met in debate. We really didn't do much. We just sort of sat near each other, as he likes to put it. I don't know why he always puts it like this. We sat at a table and stared at each other for 2 years. That's how he always puts it. I'm like, that makes it sound way weirder than it really is. But, yeah, I don't know. But he actually played a integral role in making sure I was comfortable with Shawnee Mission North. Because before I actually moved up, me and my dad went and visited the school. And when you do a walkthrough of a school, it's during normal school hours, and you can't go into any of the classes. Because I had known a guy who, from down, I'd met him in middle school, who, for a period of time, said that he went to Shawnee Mission North, and that there was this gigantic fucking, like, auditorium classes and all this other stuff. And yeah, there was a couple auditoriums, but, like, for theater. Unless you were in a theater class, you weren't in the auditoriums for classes. So I think he was full of shit. But, I visited there, and I was like, in my previous schooling, I had always been the fattest kid. Except for when I was there with Aaron, but like, and then there was like one other dude in his class, but as soon as they left, I was the fattest kid. And so I really didn't want to be the fattest kid in a school of thousands. Or at least not the only one, I should say, because I'm not trying to like throw shade at anyone. But I didn't want to be the only hefty kid. It's all, we're in the office, we're talking, we're hashing it out. I look down a hallway. At the end of the hall is what I would find out to be the bookkeeper's office. Oh shit, sorry. If any student has debts or anything like that, that's where they go to handle it. And I see a guy who's about a similar build to me. Way broader shoulders, but he was also a heftier dude. I would later find out that that was Caleb. And seeing another dude who looked like me and my size just being here, I was immediately just, oh my god, thank god I'm not the only fucking fat kid in this school. Like, it might sound silly to be comforted by that, considering I didn't actually start hanging out with the dude for years after that, but it was still comforting to me. I had spent 16 years being the only fucking hefty kid. You imagine what that fucking does to you in fucking body complex way? But anyway. So going into 2012, I finish out my junior year. I also change relationships from one to another. Um, Again, I'm not going to go into it, but it was not pretty. There was a lot of shit where people had friends that, since I had never been in long-term relationships up until that point in person, I wasn't used to dealing with a person and their group. So if a group didn't like you, whether or not that person did or not, if that person liked their group and that group didn't like you, there was a likelihood that that wasn't going to work. It's kind of one of the reasons why I have a huge complex about, even to this day, making sure that I am not confrontational with a lot of people, but I'm not going to go into that right now. Point is, there was a lot of mess with that was very unpleasant and not good. And of course, like I mentioned with Dan, there was a lot of off and on. So there was a lot of periods where, I don't like this guy. Oh, he was my friend. Oh, whatever. Which is funny because that trend, the first time I ever had a friend like that was in Admire a long time ago, with this girl named Katie who lived right next to me. Turns out we both had crushes on each other, but like we were fucking kids. Like what the fuck were we gonna do? And she moved away before either of us got to the age where like expressing yourself physically was a thing. So we would reconnect later online, and turns out, yeah, that was a thing. But we've both moved on since then. We're two totally different people. It doesn't fucking matter then. I'm happily engaged, so it's not like I'm tempted to try to hook up with someone who lives fucking 1,000 miles away that I don't even know. So, yeah, not really a problem. But yeah, junior year, I remember there were auditions for the highest choir, which is called the Chambers Choir. I auditioned for that and I got in. I also auditioned for a theater troupe, the seniors only improv theater troupe called ART. And I actually didn't intend to audition for that, but eventually I got convinced to do it on the last possible day to audition, and you had to go in and do something. You had to exhibit some sort of theatrical trade, I don't remember, and my bit was fucking dumb, and really it was just something I came up with that fucking day. All of the musicals and in all of the choirs, to audition you have to sing the fucking Star Spangled Banner, or was it America the Beautiful, whatever. You had to sing this fucking nationalistic song. So I thought it would be funny to go in and start singing that song and then be like, what? This is an audition. I have to sing the song. That's what we do every time. I'm not supposed to sing the song. What the fuck do I do? And then I don't remember what the second half was. I did some shtick. I don't know. Either way, I got it. And the way they fucking... the way you learned you made it wasn't like a call list. What they did was they had a member of the ART troupe go to your class, drag you out in the hallway, give you a costume that you then had to wear for the rest of the day. And that's fine. Like, it wasn't embarrassing. They weren't dressing you up as like a fucking penis. Like, they weren't trying to embarrass you. It'd be like a pirate costume or some actual costume from the theater department. I don't remember what mine was, but it was kind of cool because you'd be walking in the hallway and people would be like, what the fuck, ART, whatever. and then you'd like see someone else in a costume. Like, oh, they're gonna be my troop. Oh, they look good. Oh, there's another. Stuff like that. So that was cool. So at the end of my first year, not only did I have A's in all my classes, I wound up having to take fucking Algebra 1 again. I took it freshman year. I took it in the homeschooling. I took it in the recovery period. And then I had to take it again in my fucking junior year, which was dumb. But I had A's at the end of every quarter, every class, every semester, every year. I can't think of anything else that's really of note for the beginning of 2012. You go into the summer. It's my first summer break there, and I hold the very first birthday brawl tournament. Now, the birthday brawl tournament, there's almost no evidence of this on the channel anymore, but what I did was I just got a bunch of people together for my birthday, and we played Super Smash Bros. Brawl in a tournament style. It was fine. I did this for a number of years. It would eventually go from being one solitary video to being multiple videos over different matches, and the production value I kept trying to make higher and higher. It was ridiculous. But it was just a fun little thing at first. And there's a lot of videos on my channel that date back to 2012 because at this point I had a camera that I could film with, and I was doing Let's Plays back then, but it was just the camera pointed at a TV, and so a lot of those are just fucking gone. I don't want those anymore. They were poor quality. I didn't know what I was doing. I cut out all the best bits and put them in highlight videos. Or at least all the videos that I caught, because for a while I was just delete it all. I wasn't even looking at them, and there were probably some good bits in some of those, but honestly, I can't do anything about it, so they're gone forever. Going back to school in 2012, this year was marked with, was that my fucking eye? With doing all the senior stuff. I was in the highest choir doing all stuff with that. I was in ART doing stuff there, still doing the plays and musicals. I was in forensics. I didn't do debate that year because I just didn't enjoy it as much as forensics. I was in video production, I think, again, or was it just that one year? No, it was just that one year, I think, that I did it. But senior year is the year I got a car, and my first car was a 1990 fucking, I don't even remember what the fuck it was, but it fucking broke. I was driving it to school, and the fucking vents wouldn't work, and so I literally remember driving on a cold morning, driving down this winding road leading to the high school, windshield's totally fogged over, I can't see a thing, with my head out the window. It's cold, air blowing. I'm driving, fucking head out the window and go into school. And then that day I go out after school to turn it on, it just won't turn on. No, none of this. No, none of that. Dead. Fucking gone. The auto shop teacher offered to take a look at it, and he couldn't even figure out what the fuck was wrong with it, so we sold that for scrap. What's really weird to me is, like, as I'm going into these years, the later years, I'm finding less shit to say. Maybe because it hasn't turned into long-term memories yet, but, like, first half of 2012, as far as I know, the biggest occurrences that happened there were my seemingly endless pursuit of trying to get into someone's pants that did not want me in their pants, but also there's always going to be some stories that I don't mention here or there, like I went to prom with that. I got nominated for Northman. See, that's something. Okay, so Northman was essentially the most popular guy in the school contest, and I got nominated in the top 20 in the entire school. And so we had this big thing where we had a ceremony where we all dressed in suits. We got to pick someone to walk with us down to sit, and we would write this thing. It'd be read out, and then people would vote for the top 10, and then the top 3, and then number 1. I only made it to the top 20. I did not make it to the top 10. At the time, I was dating a girl, but I did not choose her to walk with me. Instead, I chose the girl I wanted to be with. Which was dumb. I wasn't like actively pursuing the other girl at the time, but I really liked her. And then when this relationship ended, I was like, okay, all fucking hands on deck trying to get with this girl. It didn't wind up working, but I chose her because I was actually closer to her than the girl I was with. Not romantically, but just like as a friend. Like this other girl I was really only with because we like mutual face sucking. And then I actually had a friend over here that I treated terribly because I didn't want to be friends with her. I wanted to fucking be in a relationship with her. But I made a whole video about that. But the point is, I chose her in the ceremony, and it was really cool because I went from being the absolute dog shit socially to being in the top 20 most popular guys in the entire high school, which is still hard for me to justify to this day. I'm like, how the fuck? But, so that was cool. But, I guess probably the biggest thing in the latter half of 2012 was, what? No. Was it? I guess. Near the end of the year, in the beginning of 2013, we were running a show called the 20th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. And it was this really small ensemble piece where some actors would take on multiple roles, and I auditioned for it and I got in. And during this time was also when I moved in with my dad, who eventually moved out of and sold the trailer in Admire. He also got with someone else. So now both my parents are with 2 other people, and so I'm moving from my mom +1 to my dad +1. And he got an apartment up here. Like I'm still in Kansas City. I'm not. Up in Kansas City. And so I moved in with them. And I remember going from auditions and all the rehearsals, or getting home late as fuck and all this other stuff. And then moves us into 2013 because, I moved in with them, and the Putnam show ran until January. And then later on that year, still doing forensics, and I'm still doing theater and choir. Turns out that the 20th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, the performance we did, we got nominated for Best Musical Number at the Blue Star Awards. Or no, it was like Best Overall Performance or some shit. And so we got to perform one of our musical numbers at the Starlight Theater in Kansas City, which is this really, really cool, really cool theater. It's open. It's, what the fuck? Okay, yeah. It's really open. It doesn't have a roof. It's like this, symposium seating, I think that's what it's called. So we got to perform there, and I got this like medal that I think I better fucking still have. If I do, it's in this little box of trinkets here. Yeah, here it is. Oh no, that's a fucking. Oh, this was my medal for when I graduated college. the Blue Star Award. Hi, Spoof. Just had to get involved. This is the Blue Star Award. Just as nominated. We didn't win, but I still got to perform at the Starlight Theater. And so there you go. That was a very cool moment indeed. There's a lot of cool shit in this little box. Maybe one day I'll make a video going through it. I don't know why anyone would give a shit, but there, that is a thing. Spoofy, could you get off of me, please? You were doing so good leaving me the fuck alone. Anyway. So that was a highlight. That was really cool. Of course, graduation. I believe I went to state in forensics with a performance of Fox and Socks. That was cool. There's also this thing, Dan again, where we're kind of in one of our off periods, but no, I think we were fine actually. But we went to a forensics tournament where it sounded like something was ripping. We went to a forensics tournament and we decided to do IDA, which is improvised duet acting. Essentially, you would get three things or something, like 3 sheets of paper, and you'd have like 7 minutes to come up with some shit. Or it was like 5 minutes or something. And then you'd have to perform a fucking scene in front of the judges, and that'd be it. And we actually got like first place for that, which was awesome, or something. But we didn't go to state because of that, because for some reason that particular tournament didn't have state qualifying IDA or whatever. But that was also the place where I got first in poetry for Fox and Socks. So that was cool. But anyway, of course you graduate, 2013, class of 2013. And I was finally done with high school. And I was glad to be. I'm glad to be done with that. Oh my god, my fucking back is killing me. Half of that creaking you're hearing is just my back. No, moving on from high school, I actually entered the workforce the same year. I know a lot of people start working while in high school. I did not have proper transportation at the time. I got a van, a green van that had no back seats, that I would later wind up totally fucking ruining the engine of, because I just never paid attention to the fluids. At least that's what I think happened. But I started at a 4-year college, University of Missouri, Kansas City, and I auditioned for a choir there. I actually got into the choir there. It was the first time I ever got put in the baritone section as opposed to the bass section. But I wasn't long for that because they wanted to do a Masterworks every month, and I was like, I don't have the fucking time to learn a new masterwork every month. A masterwork is this long fucking piece with various different bits and pieces throughout. It's a lot. We had done a masterwork in Chambers Choir in high school, and it took us like months to get it down, and we still weren't quite all the way there when we performed it. But there you go. So eventually I had to drop out, and they're like, oh, I'm sorry to lose you. And that was the last time I actually wound up singing in a choir, which it hurts because I really like singing, and I think I have the vocal dexterity to suit a choir setting. But, it is what it is. This is also the year where I started my first radio show. It was for the online radio station at UMKC called KRU. because the fucking mascot of UMKC is a kangaroo. And what it would be is it was live. You would stream it live on the website, and then it would also record at the same time when you were done with your show. It would archive your show in a rotation. So when someone was not airing live, it would just play the archive stuff. And at this time, it was a show called Warm Malt Liquor. Ran for a semester, where and I got that name from a fucking Vlogbrothers video, in which John Green said that was an in progress title for Looking for Alaska. So I chose it, and I was the only person that was there every time, but I would also try to have Nate and Dan there every once in a while, as often as they could be. Nate was also attending UMKC at the time. Dan wasn't. He had to fucking commute all the way out there to get there for it, so he wasn't there all that often. He was also still in high school because he was a year younger than the rest of us. But that is weird. I forgot about that. Dan's a year younger than the rest of us. Is that... It doesn't feel like... No, it is true, because we graduated, and then the next year we attended Dan's graduation. That's fucking weird. God, I forgot about that. But anyway, so yeah, we did Warm Malt Liquor. There was also an episode where I had my dad on as a guest. There was also some other people that came on. I remember I pre-recorded an episode where I wanted to interview one of my professors, but he fucking shoved it off onto his assistant, and I was like, I don't want to talk to you, but I'll fucking come up with something. And it was one of the worst interviews I've ever given, because I did not want to talk to the fucker. Half of it was me being like, all right, here's the thing, play a bit of music. Is it from a video game, or is it from not? And he got him all right, because obviously the dude was a fucking music professor in training. But yeah, it was terrible. But I got valuable experience from doing Warm Malt Liquor, because Caleb, who also was not attending UMKC at the time, he would listen from time to time, and every time he listened, he was like, you guys sound like you're fucking fighting all the time. And I was like, I don't feel like we are, but yeah, we bicker from time to time. But when I was like, no, dude, listening to the show, it just sounds like I'm at a fucking... I don't think he ever put it like this exactly, but it basically was like, it sounds like I'm at a Thanksgiving dinner during the part where everyone realizes they don't want to be around each other anymore. Because that was an unfortunate staple of the dynamic between me, Nate, and Dan, was argumentation, because of various reasons. We were all people who, in whatever combination, would have moments where, oh no, because and then it would fucking go, and you get all three of us together. We used to have this thing where we consider ourselves a gradient of the same thing, because Nate was a Republican, Dan was a Democrat, and I was in the middle. And there was just all these other things where one of us was on one side, the other was the other, and one of us was in the middle. And it was always that. But one thing we definitely all were was various degrees of opinionated, and assertively opinionated at that. So when there was a disagreement, there was words about it. And that would get unpleasant at times, but we never went into it being like, I'm gonna fucking... It never was that, but the next semester, did I do Warm Malt Liquor for 2 semesters, or did I do... No, it was just... Okay, so Warm Malt Liquor was the 1 semester. The next semester, I changed the show name and the format. So what essentially it was I would just show up, ramble for a while. If I had other people there, we would ramble, and then we had regularly scheduled music breaks, and then regularly scheduled ad breaks. And then that was it for like 2 hours or 3 hours or some shit. Starting in January of 2014. Well, I'm just talking about the radio right now, so I'll wait till that. Going to UMKC, for my first semester, I realized that the school had no fucking idea what it was doing. It had ideas, but these ideas were not born out of trying to make things better. It was trying to keep its accreditation. They came up with this system called... I don't remember what it was called, but it had anchor courses and discourse courses. Now, what an anchor course was not a class that would help anyone with their fucking degree. It was basically it would count as a general credit in a certain degree. But the idea was that you'd get a bunch of different people in an auditorium setting from a bunch of different degrees that were kind of related, but not like... It was weird. And then you'd have individual discourse classes. There'd be a lot of these per anchor course, where you'd have little groups of people all basically going over what it was covered in the anchor course and hashing it out in individual assignments, because you'd never get an assignment at the anchor course, you'd get it from the discourse class. And this sucks. To give you a reasoning why I say it sucks is you had to do 3 semesters of this shit. At a 4-year school, how much of that time in the first few years is dedicated toward gen eds? Most of it, if not all of it. So wasting 2 whole classes per semester on shit that is not going to help your degree was fucking inane. Not only that, but the stuff that we were learning in these classes had nothing to do with any sort of organization for our actual degrees. For example, my first one was an engineering class. I was a communications major. Why the fuck was I in this class? Because everyone else in the auditorium was some kind of engineer. I don't know why I was in this class. And we just sort of went over kind of technology stuff for the first half of the semester. And then the second half, another teacher took over, and we basically covered a book for a whole semester. It was a book called All Corvettes Are Red, which is dumb, and the book sucked, and it was dumb. And then the discourse class I was in, attached to that, the teacher was kind of cute, but she seemed more focused on, like, looking cute and being friendly with the class, because the teacher in these discourse classes was always a grad student that was just trying to figure out, because they had implemented it, I think, like that year, so no one knew what the fuck they were doing. They were just trying to figure out how to use these discourse classes to actually help the students, because the system was not designed to help the students. It was designed to increase discourse amongst various degrees, because diversity and all the other fucking hot points. It was a fucking waste of time. So yeah, I think in 2013 I also started my first job. I was at Barnes & Noble. And yeah, it's not a bad place to start, I guess. Most people's first jobs are like as a broom pusher or fast food or retail or something like that. And I guess Barnes & Noble is retail, obviously, but my first job was at a place that is notoriously hard to get a job at. And my job was to be kind of a utility player. I was trained to either be out on the sales floor selling books or working at the cafe. I never actually wound up working out on the floor selling the books. They trained me to do it and then just always kept me at the cafe. So I was like, okay. So I started as a barista. at a Barnes & Noble cafe. Now, I want to point something out to you people, because this came up so much while I was working there. Unless the banner says Starbucks, the location is not a Starbucks. It might sell Starbucks products. There might be signs that have the Starbucks logo. But if the banner says Barnes & Noble Cafe, or just cafe in general, if it doesn't say Starbucks, then it's not a Starbucks. You can't use your Starbucks gift card. You can't use your Starbucks rewards. You can't use your Starbucks credit card. You can't do that shit. You're not going to get all the things that you want from a Starbucks. They don't have all the Starbucks things. There's a whole lot of other shit. Because the Barnes & Noble Cafe, we had like Cheesecake Factory cheesecakes and a bunch of different other locations with other foods and drinks and whatnot. But we didn't get like the new promotional items from Starbucks. We just had the standard Starbucks fare. And so many people were like, "This is Starbucks. You have to take my Starbucks card." And it's like, first of all, don't tell me what the fuck I have to do. Second of all, you're fucking blind. That says Barnes & Noble Cafe. Get the fuck out of my store. It was fucking ridiculous. But I was there for 8 months. Oh, kind of blinked out on me again. I was there for 8 months. And during this time, I don't think there's anything else to really cover for 2013. So let's go ahead and change it to 2014. Probably one of the first big things that happened in 2014 was I took a trip. So I guess at some point in 2013 is when the van fucking bricked on me, and I had to sell that and get another car. Because when I took this trip, I had a Saturn S Series coupe, and I had this car for a couple years, so it's not bad. But if you don't know what a Saturn S Series coupe is, it is a fucking small ass car. It is small. It had 3 doors. What the fuck? Right. It's more like a 2.5 door thing. It had driver's side, passenger side. Behind the driver's side door, you could also, there's a latch, kind of like some pickup trucks have this, where you then open it up the other way, and someone could get into the tiny ass back seat. And this was always a source of kind of like ho ha ha amongst my friends, because around this time I started hanging out with the big group of friends again. I remember I think it was in sometime in the winter time where Sam and Zach invited me to go to their karaoke nights at Applebee's, and then slowly we started bringing in Nate and Caleb and Kyle and Dan at some point, and then Zach moved away, and Sam wound up working a million hours a fucking day at Wendy's, and none of the other people wanted to do karaoke, and so we all started playing D&D, and we started on this long ass campaign that took forever, but it was fun. And we had a rotating cast of had Patrick and Devin come in and leave, and then Dan would come in and leave a couple times. Sam would come in and try, but then he would wind up working, and so he kept coming in and out. But in around January, I decided to go visit a person I had met online. Not in a creepy way. This is sounding creepy. Back in my early days of doing YouTube, when I wasn't doing gaming stuff almost entirely, I was a talking head. I would do videos kind of like this, except for more focused and edited. This is just a long ass fucking podcast, which I understand requires a little more fucking effort than just turning on a camera and a microphone and going on for hours, but that's what I'm doing right now. It was this guy who had a YouTube channel called Awesome Austin. It was Awesome Aostin because he couldn't get the Awesome Austin YouTube name, so it was AOSTIN. But he did videos that were funny, and I found he was funny, and I'm still friends with him on Facebook, actually. But to my knowledge, he's completely stopped doing videos and now is focusing on doing like music or something. I don't know. But he lived in Madison, Wisconsin at the time. Now, what better time to drive north by yourself in a Hot Wheels car than in fucking January? It was so fucking dumb. But I wanted to fucking meet him, and I got like a period of time where I had a good amount of time off from work without me having to ask for days off. And so I was like, you know what? I'm not in school right now. I'm not doing work right now. Let me go up for a fucking weekend visit. So we scrounged up the money, and I drove up to Madison, Wisconsin from Kansas. And for about a week, or at least a couple of days, I was up there. I stayed in his apartment, slept on the couch. We recorded some videos and hung out. And I remember he kept trying to be like, do you want to see the city? You want to go do a thing? And I'm like, oh, I'm fine staying here and just hanging out. And that's when I started to realize that I was getting more and more boring as a person. Because I remembered, even just talking in here, I remember always being like, I would rather be out amongst people and getting shit on than at home and bored. Like, and here I was in a new city with someone who's offering me to show me around and all this other stuff, and I'm like, nah, stay here and play video games and hang out with you. And I don't know if he didn't want to do that or if he was just feeling like a bad host or whatever, but he kept suggesting that stuff, and I was like, no, I'm good. And that kind of just evolved into where I am now, where if I don't have to go somewhere, I'm fucking not. Like, I know later on today I probably need to go to the store, but like, I'm probably just gonna go at some random time and then come straight back because my back is fucked. But anyway, so yeah, I visit Austin and I come back, and I'm back at UMKC, and I am doing my I'm doing my new show with Caleb, because he is like, first of all, you need a fucking dedicated person there, because not knowing what to expect every week is not good for your show. It's like, okay, well, you want to do it, because I had been watching a lot of Sifl and Ollie. I had all these different ideas of stuff I wanted to do that required a little more form. And me and Caleb, we, like I said, we'd known each other in high school, but we never really hung out until like D&D started being a thing, and that's when we found out that we just fucking click. Like, we can talk for fucking ever. And so I needed a co-host. I wanted him to be my co-host. He agreed, and we did the thing. I remember we even we shot a video where it was like we had all these ideas of the bunker buster, where one of us would come up with, we would have a real crazy story and a fake crazy story, and the other person had to guess which one it was, and if they got it wrong, they got a punishment, which literally just devolved into who bought fast food on the way home, because the day we would do a radio was also the day we did D&D, which is like, why the fuck would you do that to yourself energy wise? But whatever, because these D&D sessions, man, there were some times where we'd be out all day at fucking school, because at that time he was also, I don't know if he was in that for that first semester, but I know he definitely was for the fall semester of 2014. He was going to Johnson County Community College, which I would eventually wind up transferring to. You're all day at school, then you go and you do a radio show where you're talking for hours, then you drive halfway across the fucking city to go and do D&D until, God, sometimes we went until fucking, we had to go to college again the next day. We'd get fucking Waffle House in the middle of the night, and it was fucking ridiculous. I don't know where the fuck we had that energy, because now if I'm like, if it gets like 9 o'clock, I'm like, okay, I gotta That type of thing. It's a little much, but but yeah. So what the fuck? Okay. Sorry. There's just paper on my desk. I was like, what the fuck is this? And then I realized it's something for Bri's work. And more UMKC bullshit happens in this semester. It's ridiculous. I got another anchor course, which this anchor course was the fuck was this anchor course? Oh yeah, it was I don't honestly remember what the fuck it was. There was so much different shit happening in this semester. I don't even fucking know what it was trying to be. But it was during this time where I was starting to entertain ideas of moving out. Because the person that my dad is with currently and was with at the time believes strongly that once a kid's out of high school, out on their own. And I think that's barbaric, stupid, archaic, and fucking inane, and all these other adjectives to describe. Basically, I think that's stupid as shit. But you definitely, at the same time, don't want someone hanging around for fucking ever. You need to get out and do your own shit. So there you go. There were a couple of guys in my first anchor course that we had gone and looked at apartments with, but at the time, I just did not have... Okay, no, that was... Oh, yeah, that was... Okay, so it's a couple of guys that I was looking at apartments with. That didn't wind up going because one guy had, like, all of the income. He was working at a rail yard, and so he was making, like, $90,000 a year, and I was like, okay, so you're paying more of the bills than I am at my fucking barista job. And so we were working on that, but one guy would have had to commute a long way, and my job was like way in the other direction, so it just wound up falling apart because we just stopped communicating about it. And then in this second anchor course, I actually went and looked at a room at a house with some of the girls I met in that class that were all renting a multi-room house on Troost in Kansas City. Now, if you know Troost, the reputation that I was told essentially is that if you are looking to get mugged or to have your shit stolen or shot or anything like that, you go to Troost. But I looked at the house, and it just did not seem feasible. Wait a minute. No, that was later on. Okay, so that actually wound up happening in the latter half of 2014. But in the earlier half, the anchor course I was in was like American history from the beginning to 1868, I think. Nothing really important happened there. I was still doing all of the above, but I just got the anchor courses mixed up. In the middle of 2014, it was actually early 2014. It was around May. I did another birthday brawl tournament. And for this one, I wanted to do the production values up a little bit. And so I found a bunch of pictures of the various people that were going to be there from Facebook. And I went through, because I didn't have Photoshop, I just went through and in Paint erased all of the backgrounds on these various pictures and dumped green in them so they could be green screen pictures for when I put them in a video editor. I could put them whatever. One of them was a picture of Joel, which you might remember me mentioning very briefly as being in college from my high school. Now, Joel, when he graduated from Shawnee Mission North, he did not go to UMKC or any of the colleges in the area. He went to a college in Ottawa, Kansas, which, if you know anything about my recent history, might sound familiar. Ow, fuck. What I had done was I took a picture of Joel from Facebook where he's leaning into frame and kind of doing like a thumbs up. You couldn't see that. Thumbs up. And green screened it out, and I posted it on Facebook because I was like, oh, look at what I'm working on. And a friend of Joel, because Joel went to college there, their friend was also not working. They were going to school at Ottawa University. They saw those pictures and decided to do something with them. So they actually like put Joel in like there's like the D-Day kiss where a woman's getting sexually assaulted by a sailor, and she put him leaning in front of that. And there was one where it's morbid as shit, but it's the fucking burning napalm Vietnamese kids, and then he's like, hey. And I was like, what the fuck? Because it's an interesting creative thing. It was funny, and someone was using my pictures and making something funny with them. So I was like, I want to fucking know who this person is. I've got to know who this person is. So I sent them a message, and they didn't get back to me for a long time. And eventually I sent them another message. I was like, don't like talking to strangers or something. I don't know what I said, but they were like, oh, no, I'm sorry. I meant to get back to you, and I just never did. And we wound up talking. Eventually we wound up chatting and doing like Minecraft on Xbox Live together. That was cool. And in the middle of 2014, in about April, I had moved from working at Barnes & Noble Cafe because the fucking they got a new manager there, and I had put in that I needed days off for my finals, like months in advance. When I knew I needed a day off, I do it as soon as possible. I schedule it in the book, but the manager decided to give that day off to a girl that was an absolute cuntbag to me, who also requested that day off like a week before the day, but make me work that day. And I was like, hey, I requested this day off like months ago. Why am I working this day? I have finals. I can't come in. He was like, well, you can come in after your finals. I was like, I have like 3 finals that day. I can't come in after that. Well, you need to work around it with it. I was like, well, why the fuck am I working on a day where I have 3 finals, morning, afternoon, and night, when she is saying that she only has 1, and she requested it like a week in advance as opposed to my months in advance. And whatever. What wound up happening is that manager wound up slashing my hours to shit, and it's that typical thing of trying to get an employee to quit because you don't like them, instead of firing them, because if you fire them, then they can get unemployment, whatever. But the person my dad's with was working at Starbucks at the time, and since I was already a barista, I figured I'll go there. That Starbucks was in between the apartment I was living at and UMKC, so it was a much easier commute. So I worked with her to get me a job there. I applied, interviewed, got it all good. And then in the middle of the year, after I was talking to Joel's friend on Xbox Live doing my Minecraft, we arranged for me to go down to Ottawa to visit them, to hang out. And I remember I got off of a Starbucks shift, so I'm like all work sweaty, and I got my outfit on with like coffee stains, all because they make you wear black or white shirts. I'm like, why would you want to wear a white shirt when you're gonna get covered in coffee stains? But I didn't have many button-up shirts or dress shirts. I still don't. So I wound up having this white button-up long-sleeve shirt that had fucking coffee stains all over me. And I hopped in my fucking Saturn and I drove from Prairie Village to Ottawa, Kansas, where Joel's friend, who was living with their grandma was out of town at the time, So I came over and hung out, and that's when the first day that in person I met Bri. Surprise! Joel's friend was Bri, and obviously that's turned out well. That was the first day we ever hung out together, and that was also the day we agreed to go out. We started dating that day. And so that's the relationship I've been in since. Going into later 2014, obviously, I'm still living in Kansas City. She's living in Ottawa. We only see each other a couple times. We actually have a fight near the end of the year, but we reconcile near the beginning of the next year. But before I get to 2015, I have another semester at UMKC, what would be my last one, where I almost wind up moving to the house on Troost, which I didn't wind up doing because in August of 2014, I moved jobs again. The thing about the Starbucks location I started working at was, originally it was in a building with multiple stores in it, and it didn't have a drive-through, and so it was kind of this little nook kind of Starbucks, and it was nice, and it was personable. It was kind of small, but it felt like an actual cafe. And I was getting my groove there because I had already been making Starbucks stuff, so I already knew how to do practically all of it. But then, like a week after I started training, they opened a new store just like 50 feet away, moved us all to that one, and that one had a drive-through. And they did not have the staff to manage a drive-through because there were multiple times where I wound up, during a school rush, being the only person running the front counter and the drive-through, making drinks, taking orders by myself. That was fucking ridiculous. So I went from there, and there was a job fair happening at Oak Park Mall, which is actually the same mall that I had worked at Barnes & Noble at. It's a job fair for GameStop. They were hiring for a new game advisor, which is their bottom of the rung fucking retail clerk person. It's a cashier. And I wanted to get away from Starbucks, but I was like, job fair? I don't know. At this point, every time I had gone in for an interview at a place, I got the job. I believe there was also a point during this year where me and Caleb tried working at a call center, but that wound up not working out. Or it might have been this year or the year after that. But we tried working at a call center, and Caleb lasted a day, and I lasted a week before we both fucking quit. It was miserable fucking work there. It was terrible. So never even fucking mind that. But it's funny about that place, though, is that they have so much turnover that their applications are just sitting like on a desk, unattended. Like, just take one. It's like candy on Halloween where it's just a bowl on the porch. It's like, fill it out, leave it here. There you go. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. But it was making outbound calls for surveys. We weren't soliciting, so it was still technically legal, but we got a lot of people like, I'm on the no-call list, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, we're not trying to sell you anything. We just want to hear your thoughts about the radio. But spending 8 hours a day getting fucking screamed at about shit that you're not doing wrong, and it was just fucking, and the managers there were miserable, and you worked like way into the night because, you know, when you would get to 9 o'clock and you were supposed to call people, well, you just switched to the next time zone. And so we would be there until 11 calling people on the fucking West Coast, like right up until 9. And people were like, you're not supposed to call this late. And it's like, we have until 9. I was like, well, fuck you. It's like, oh, fuck you too. Goddamn. But what I was working at going to this job fair. And so there's a lot of fucking people, and there's this dude who's sitting in the fucking food court doing all the interviews. You just show up, fill out your application, and then gum up, talk to the person, and then leave. You get 5 minutes. And I was the only one at that job fair that got hired. And so that started my year of working at GameStop. So that was cool. I wound up working at that fucking mall again. So much for the better commute. But what wound up happening was at the end of 2014, I had been doing D&D with Caleb, Kyle, and all of them, and doing all the above with Caleb. And Caleb and Kyle were going to Johnson County Community College, and they convinced me to transfer for the next semester to the community college, because not only would you be able to take care of your gen eds, but you wouldn't have all the bullshit with UMKC, and it was much better. So that moves us into 2015. Here we go. Switch the year on screen. 2015. Started 2015 in the doghouse with Bri because we were having a fight, but we eventually reconciled and everything was fine. We went on a break. But, everything's fine. We don't even consider that as a ending of the relationship. It was just like a don't fucking talk to me for a while type of situation. But we all got it all figured out, and everything's been fine since. But I started at Johnson County Community College, and it was the best semester of my college career, because we went from doing all of the above at KRU at UMKC to doing all of the above on ECAV, which was Johnson County Community College's online radio show. It wasn't live anymore, and it was much more timed and segmented, but I think I had a lot of fun doing the show, and we got recognition for it. Like at KRU, we had fans in like a text line, and we were at some point we were the most popular show there. But at fucking ECAV, we had people like who referenced our show to Caleb in person, levels of recognition. So like that was cool. And it was the best semester of college for me, because not only because I was taking classes I was actually interested in. Like, I started doing a video game design class, but I had to drop out because I didn't have anything. I didn't have the time to commit to making projects for that, or the technical capabilities of doing it at home. I also tried to take Japanese, and I made it all the way through learning the language, like the alphabets. But when it came to learning the vocabulary, then I just lost all motivation at that point, so I dropped out there. I was actually getting paid to do all of the above, which was cool. At the time, turns out it wasn't cool because it was untaxed, which meant I had to pay money back at the end of the year for that, and it was for $50 a fucking every 2 weeks. Like, that was kind of cool in the moment. I got a paid gig as a professional DJ, but like, I wound up paying more in taxes at the end of the year, so that sucked. So that semester was largely marked with enjoying my time hanging out with my friends. Because we were doing D&D every week and doing all this stuff and hanging out, and I almost moved in with Caleb at one point, and a whole bunch of just being around people a lot, and that was great. But then the semester ended, and before the semester ended, me and Bri had discussions about moving in together, because we weren't seeing each other very often, but every time we did see each other, we still liked each other. But we needed to both get more profitable jobs in order to do that. Eerily familiar fucking situation here. So I dropped out of school, much to the chagrin of my voice class teacher. because I was in like a beginner voice class during this time, and the teacher, while we were practicing, we got like a rehearsal time with the teacher outside of class before our final performance, which would be our final final test, a final. I was doing "You Raise Me Up," the Josh Groban arrangement, and we ran through it once, and she grabbed my wrist and pulled me to the choir director's door, knocked on the door, and was like, "You are going to be in choir." And I was like, I really am flattered to fuck that you would do all this and that you think that highly of my performance, especially since I don't think I did that good that day. I flubbed a key change. But at that point, me and Bri had already decided that I was going to be dedicating all of my time to work, not splitting my time between work and school. So I was not going to be attending Johnson County Community College again. And she was like, oh, fucking goddamn it. She really wanted me in that choir, but nope, wasn't to be. So come that summer, looking for supplemental income, I took on a second job at a place called Topgolf, which is essentially a 3-story golf dart place. You're swinging, you're trying to get them into targets laid out on the grass. It also serves a lot of food and memberships and whatever as a bar. I found this working there fucking miserable because it was very much a like, it was Disney levels of you have to be happy all the time, and it gets to you after a while being around a bunch of fucking. This was also the first job where I noticed a huge age gap between me and a lot of my coworkers, and not in the I'm the younger one way. I was a number of years. A lot of people employed here were high school students, and so a lot of them were very hyper and annoying, and hadn't yet learned the value of doing your goddamn job instead of dicking around on your phone the entire shift. Because I found a location, a position that really worked for me. It was managing the golf club bag room, where people could rent a bag of golf clubs to take to the fucking the place you putt at. It was one spot, so I'm not saying the green, but I could manage that. I knew all the racks, and I could manage it all. It was very organization based, very good for me. But the problem was there was no camera in this room, except for at the door. And there was a whole back area where they had more storage, and so people would regularly come in, say they're going to grab something, and then just stand back there on their fucking phones. And so when a manager would show up to check on me, they would see a bunch of fucking people back there, and they're like, what are they doing back here? Get to your fucking job. You can't let them back here. And I'm like, I am not fucking supposed to be managing them. I'm not a manager. But if it's part of my job to keep them out, then I'll do it. And so a lot of people started getting mad at me because they would be like, oh, I need to grab something. I was like, oh, I'll grab it for you. He was like, I want to go grab it. I'm like, you got someone to text, don't you? I was like, no. And I'm like, well, then what do you need me to grab for you? I'll go grab it for you. That's literally what I'm here to do. And they're like, never mind. And then they leave. And so I got a lot of people mad at me just because I wasn't supposed to let them dick off in the fucking back room. But then, come around August, I got an opportunity to get a job that would pay more than both of my jobs at GameStop and Topgolf combined, and that was working at Machine Labs, which was a factory that my dad, uncle, brother, cousin's boyfriend, mom's boyfriend were all working at concurrently. So I was like, okay, I'll make it 6. So I applied there and I got the job, and I quit GameStop and Topgolf, and I got a job there. It was $13 an hour, full time, mandatory overtime every other week. only 3 days a week, with every other week being a 4-day week. Schedule doesn't sound that bad. 12.5-hour shifts. Okay, that sucks. Overnight. Okay, not as good, but you can still manage that. That's fine. Working in a warehouse with no heating or cooling. Usually the heating was the problem because it was a warehouse of fucking machines. So it used to be hot as fuck. Even in winter, you're like dying of heat stroke. And the job was to meticulously measure to the micro level. My section made bits for airbags. So all these machines, I'm managing like 7-10 machines, something like that are all making various bits and pieces for airbags. And I would have to take a piece, go and measure it to all the little tiny little divots and whatever. And if it was off by a little bit, I have to go over and configure the machine. That's fine. I was allowed to wear headphones, but the thing about that is the whole area, the air was almost more liquid than air because of all the oil. I would come home drenched in oil to the point where I'd have to go immediately to the shower. The clothes I wore would have to be washed multiple times. And even at the point at which I left this job later that year, those clothes were still fucking slick and smelly of oil. We just had to throw them away. Because what we'd have to do is we'd also have to clean out the machines. So we'd have to stop a machine, open it up, reach our unprotected hands inside, grab metal shavings with our bare hands. There's oil going everywhere, by the way, and pull it out and clear everything out. We would get so many cuts and gouges. Many people went to the hospital for this. Clean it all out and then start it again, and we'd have to haul these heavy ass fucking totes of metal parts everywhere and weigh them and count them and all this other stuff. And you're doing this for 12.5 hours. And there was no air conditioning in my section. So it was like regularly 120 degrees or some ridiculous shit. Drenching myself in oil, cutting my hands, trying to listen to music, which, if you're covered in oil, do you want to be like messing with your fucking phone or your MP3 player or whatever? Like, no, you'd have to put your shit in a plastic bag and touch it over that. And your headphones, good luck using those anywhere else because those things are fucking soaked. Ow, fuck. And at the time when I got this job, we were able to put down a deposit, first and last month's rent on an apartment in Olathe, Kansas. And I moved into it about a week before Bree did because Bree's grandma sabotaged her a little bit by not letting her be able to, by basically deciding to redo the stairs to the carriage house above their garage, which had a lot of Bree stuff in it, taking it down the day she was planning on getting all her stuff together. She admitted to this. I'm not just making conjecture, but yeah, she admitted that that's what she was doing. So for a while, I was living for the first time by myself in an apartment that was placed as close to in between Ottawa, Kansas, where Bree was still going to school and working at, and my section of Kansas City, which is like the Miriam, Mission, Shawnee Mission area, where all my friends were at, and where my family was at, and where my work was at. It was placed in between, so neither of us were close to anyone we knew. But when I was up there alone, I moved out my own, didn't have internet the first day. The only thing in the fridge was a half-gallon of milk. Some white bread wasn't in the fridge, it was there, and some, not butter, not margarine, vegetable oil spread. It was the cheapest shit you could get. So from that first week of working at Machine Labs, my lunch was water that I kept in, not this, because this is way too susceptible to getting drenched in oil. I had like a travel mug. Water and a vegetable oil spread sandwich on white bread. That was what I ate at work. And I'd come home to an empty apartment in an area I didn't know. Even after Bree moved in, we were still getting used to being around each other. She was trying to get used to living with someone, and it was away from home. So she was retreating into herself a lot, and then I was having an unrealistic expectation of what living with a person meant. I was at first being like, oh, it's like we're going to hang out every day. No, that's not what living with someone is like. You're not hanging out every day doing stuff. You are both at home where you're trying to relax and just be. And having someone who's always like, hey, you want to do a thing? Hey, you want to do a thing? And then when you're like, no, I'm just trying to relax, being like, fine. Like, no, that's not good. We worked that out. Had to really quickly. So we were both lonely. The apartment was small and dark and not good. It was a shit apartment. And so a lot of things just led together to the point where I got seriously suicidal at Machine Labs, and so it was decided I needed to fucking leave there, find a job that was at least close to as profitable, because we had to make rent, obviously. So at that time, Caleb and Kyle had gotten jobs at a Walmart store that was a little bit away from them, working in the back unloading trucks. And so I talked to them, and only about a month and a half after working at Machine Labs, I left and went to Walmart, where I started working there. And then I was getting injured every week because the management there was terrible. We would show up and be like, all right, who's supposed to be here? This, and then this. Who's actually here? Couple people. Cool. We got 3 trucks to unload. We got 2 people. Fucking make it work. If you're here if you don't get your breaks, cool. If you don't get your lunch, you got to get your work done. We weren't allowed to go on lunch until the trucks were unloaded. So if you didn't get the trucks unloaded until an hour before you're supposed to leave, you didn't get a break, you didn't get a lunch, you didn't get anything until that time. And there was no like, oh, you got done early if there was only like 1 truck and everyone miraculously showed up. If you got your job done, you take your lunch, you go out on the floor and start moving everything around, hauling things out to the floor. So even if your job was done, they would invent shit for you to do that was from other people's jobs to fucking do that. And that's fine, you know, if you're supposed to be there for a shift, it's expected you stay there for the whole fucking shift. It makes sense. The problem was that the system we had to unload stuff had to have been violating some sort of regulation, because we were walking like with that much space, carrying heavy shit, and hauling mounds of stuff, like way higher and bulkier than any other Walmart I've ever seen them do. And at one point I had my toe dislocated. I was getting beat the shit out of, essentially. But so was everyone else. It wasn't just me, by the way. Everyone else was like tripping, falling, spraining, breaking, a whole bunch of shit. Our turnover was ridiculous. Like, the people that were there when I started and the people that were there when I left was essentially me, Caleb, Kyle, and one other dude. Not even the manager stuck around. But eventually, one day when I was driving down to do D&D with Caleb and Kyle and them, the Saturn fucking blew up. Straight up blew up. While I'm on the fucking interstate. So I'm like, oh fuck. And at this time, I decided to be fucking weird or whatever. I wore a maroon button-up shirt, my mom's old maroon bell-bottom pants, and suspenders, so it looked like I was just one big fucking plum, essentially. Um, and that just happens to be the day where a cop finds me searching through a car on the side of the road. That was fun. Eventually, I explain it to them. Caleb and Kyle come to pick me up. We get a tow truck. We tow it to a place to try to get it looked at, where it blows up again when they try to turn it on. They try to work on it for the next week. And eventually realize, like, there's no saving this car, but you can't keep it in our lot. So unless you want to pay to get it towed again, which fortunately the tow truck was part of an emergency services, they didn't charge as long as it was within like a mile or so, and we found a place that was like at like 0.9 mile, like 0.9 mile, and it was like, oh, fucking great. They were like, we can get it to the point where it turns on, but at any point it might explode again, and at that point it would catch on fire and might blow up entirely. So you need to take this home. And so we were saving up money to move at this point, because we were like, we need to get the fuck out. We had decided to move down to Ottawa. We didn't realize why this would happen, but moved down to Ottawa once our lease was done. But we did not decide to spring for the tow truck. Instead, they didn't tell me how severe the car was until I was like out there about to get into it. Because before that, they're like, oh, it turns on. We just can't fix it anymore. You're probably going to have to take it home, get it pick and pull, stuff like that. Get out to the car. And I'm about to get in. They're like, all right, don't wear your seatbelt. Don't lock the door. As soon as it starts to fuck up, get the fuck out of this car. You're going to die. Have fun. Closes it. I'm like, what the fuck? And then instead of at that point spending money we didn't have, at one point in this apartment, we cut it so close that we wound up selling like Magic the Gathering cards to make rent. We were not financially prepared for this apartment, but I guess I just decided that I didn't want to spend the money on the tow, and I was like, I guess I'm just driving this, which was dumb, but I drove the car very carefully out onto the highway, not the highway, but busy street, my apartment complex. The whole time, I barely touched the gas. So many people were mad at me. My hazards were on, my seatbelt was not on, and the car was not locked. But it didn't blow up. So I get there, and we get it pick and pulled. Now I don't have a car, which means I can't drive to Walmart to work there anymore. So I turned in my resignation there, and I wound up getting a job where Bri is now working, which was at a Goodwill, which was just down the street. I could walk to if need be, but since we were both working there, I could just work with her on her shifts and then be good to go there. So we could just go to work at the same time. The problem is that obviously the money you're making working factory work full time is not going to be the same money you're getting working retail part time. So money just kept getting tighter and tighter. And it was at this time that my mental problems really started to flare up a lot. This would take us into 2016. What I was doing at Goodwill was I was technically, again, hired as a utility player. It was just a store associate. But they never trained me to do anything other than working the donation door and the back in general. Because at the time, I was this young, spry guy who had the weird German fat guy strength, Scandinavian Viking fat guy strength. And so people would bring in a bunch of shit to donate, or they'd be buying a bunch of shit that was heavy, and I was the one that would haul it back and forth. As I put it to people, I used to lift couches for a living. And that's essentially what I would do. People would bring in stuff and be like, oh, it's a little heavy. And I'd be like, okay. And then I'd carry it in. And at the time, I was getting really strong, but I kind of fucked myself over here because they kept telling me, you need to warm up, to stretch before you do shit like that. And I never did. And at the time, like, I've been having ankle problems pretty much ever since high school. I remember when I was at Shawnee Mission North, we had to do the mile, and the PE teacher was like, all right, everyone has to run the mile, and if anyone stops, if you stop, if you walk at any point, you don't get any points for today, and you might get a detention if you do it too many times. Well, threaten me all you want, it'll work. So, I ran it the whole way, and eventually it just turned into, puttering, but I never walked. I never stopped. And my ankles felt like there was literally knives just jabbed into it, just into the bone. I would later find out that I have arthritis in my ankles. So there's mobility fucked up number one. But going into 2016, I am having a plethora of mental problems that eventually culminate in, at one point, we have our store manager gets fired, and so our store is being managed by like a series of guest managers, which was dumb. And one guy, absolute and total prick, he looked at me and was like, oh, you're a store associate. That means you can use the front register. I'm leaving you out there alone, and every time you ask a question, I'm going to treat you like shit, and I'm going to verbally abuse everyone in the back. And he didn't like say it like that, but that's what he did. He put me on the front, where I was not trained, refused to answer my questions when I had them, and instead would fucking scream at me about being stupid in front of customers, then would go in the back and yell at the guy back there who had only been there for like a week, and so he didn't know what he was doing. And there was the three of us running the whole store. I got so fucked up from this like 8-hour shift of just utter fuckery that on the drive home, I almost drove into oncoming traffic. And when I started to work again next, a new guest manager was working with the other guy that had been the guest manager, and they were being like, all right, so you're going to work the front again, and I started to cry, like, immediately. And they're like, whoa, what the fuck? And so I had to explain to them, like, I've got a long series of undiagnosed medical problems. I can't afford to go to a hospital, but what fucking happened that day, and I fucking told him that he fucking almost made me kill myself, because that's kind of the stuff I've been leaving out, is the lower moments. I'm just going over some of the things, but I've attempted suicide several times, and I've certainly contemplated it and planned it a lot more than I could ever count. But this is the only one that really had lasting consequences at this point. They decided to arrange through Goodwill to arrange a private therapist to see me. And the company would pay for it. I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. The downside is that they refuse to work my work schedule around those therapy sessions, and I had to go to the therapy sessions in order, like, I had to go to a certain amount of ones that were scheduled. It was like, there's 30 scheduled, and you had to go to 28 of them, otherwise you have to pay the whole bill. So I had to go to those. But then they would schedule me on the days where I have the appointments. And I'm telling them, like, I can't do it. I have the appointments these days. They wouldn't change them. And so I wound up missing work a lot. because I wasn't about to be on the fucking hook for thousands of dollars of therapy bills because it was a private therapist. These are people that charge $1 million an hour. So I would go to the therapy because I needed it. I get a bunch of diagnoses that I would later corroborate with the Johnson County Mental Health Facility that I would later go to because they had a sliding scale when we were paying for it ourselves. And I'd get on medication there this year in 2016. But since Goodwill would refuse to work my schedule around my therapy sessions, one day I came in, I got told I've missed too many days from work, and refused to listen to my explanation and fired me. It's the only time I've ever been fired. It's incredible. So after that, the next month in May, I started a job in Ottawa, Kansas. And essentially, during this point, Bri had to take a year off of school because tax papers didn't get lined up in time for FAFSA, so she couldn't get all that figured out for her scholarship or whatever. But she had also been fired from that same Goodwill for relatively similar reasons not long before I was. So we both got jobs in Ottawa. But we're still living in Olathe, which, if you don't know, is like an hour drive on the highway, and we only have one car. So we coordinate it so that we're working at the same time. So we're driving down to Ottawa. Either she is, I am, or we both are. Practically every day. That is a lot of gas. But I start at the Days Inn there. And I would remain at that job for a long time, actually. We moved down to, what the fuck? Oh, I don't know. We moved down to Ottawa that August. A lot of August stuff. And we remained there until earlier this very year in 2019. So we were living in Ottawa for almost 3 years. But during 2016, I should mention, one of the big fucking moments of my life happened. It was before we moved out of the Olathe apartment. I grew up watching a lot of YouTube, and Admire was my only friend, which is as pathetic as you can fucking get. I was watching a lot of channels, but one in particular was a channel called Random Productions. They worked with a channel called Rich Alvarez, and they did a lot of stuff. And through that, watching them and reaching out, I met a guy named Austin Stevenson. And we would talk off and on for the following years and chat about what kind of projects we could work on together. And finally, he tells me he's filming a horror movie called Hammer Boys. And it would be so cool if I could be in it. I'm like, hey, that sounds great. We have to figure out the money for that. And so eventually we figure out where I save up the money so that I could afford half the trip and he would finance the other half. We get it to work. I fly out to California for the better part of a month and we film this fucking movie. And it was fantastic. I had never flown before. And so with connecting flights back and forth, I flew 4 times that month. And while I was out there, I got to experience what it was like to be in California. I met a lot of different people. Realized that the rent I was paying in Kansas was tiddlywinks compared to the rent they pay in California. Filmed the movie. I stayed on set a lot. We were at the bar a lot. I tried to get as drunk as possible, and I'm too fat, I guess. And there's a lot of small stuff I could glean from that, but I think I've already covered it before. But that was a very important moment for me. It's my first official movie credit, which is nice. But yeah, we eventually moved down to Ottawa, and we're there by ourselves for the first part. Bree is hopping from job to job. I'm staying at Days Inn. She eventually starts going back to school, and she would later go on to finish her bachelor's degree in psychology, which is awesome. She's a fucking trooper. She works so goddamn hard. She's so smart and talented and capable. She's inspired me practically more than any other person I've ever met, and it's the greatest pleasure of my life to be able to be close to her in any way, let alone have her want to be around me too. It's I getting sappy, but there you go. My life is so much ridiculously better now that she's in it. It's I could go on forever about that, but this is just sort of a timeline deal. So into 2017, my brother, who had been living with my dad in Admire for a while, but when dad moved up and I moved in with my dad, my brother Aaron moved in with in my place with my mom and her then boy. And the situation there was much more volatile than it was with me there, and that was already bad. So eventually, since me and Bree got a 2-bedroom apartment in Ottawa with this explicit purpose of having a place for people to go if they needed a place to go, that's actually how I met Jesse. As he needed a place to stay when his apartment stair broke. So we invited him to stay in our guest room. We decided to offer Aaron a place to stay while he found a place to stay of his own, because he could not stay with my mom and her boyfriend at the time. Asshole, you remember him. So he moved in, and he's still there now. Eventually the plan went from you stay here while you find your own place to this is your place. And that's fine. We were glad to have him there, glad to help. He helped pay for the rent. He wasn't just laying about. He was totally cool about it. We had to adjust a lot because we went from being us to being with someone else, and since then we've still been living with other people. I'm relishing living with just Bree and the dog. Speaking of the dog, in 2017 we got him. Got him in January, I think. No, we got him in like February or something, but we got Bree's van in January. I remember because we did that on Royal Rumble night. And then, of course, this same year I'd also get the car I have now. There was a lot of fucking bullshit to deal with that I'm not even going to go into. Point is, it was not pleasant. There was a lot of bullshit with that car deal, man. Not happy. But yeah, so Aaron moved in, and then we get the dog, and was that 2017? It feels like, am I a year behind? No, yeah, it was 2017. I remain at Days Inn this entire time, and over this time, the big change that happens in my life is my relationship to the people around me. Because I'm realizing more and more that clinging to the stability of mutual agreement to not address bad feelings is not a healthy way to live, and instead mutually agreeing to address them, and if the result is no relationship or a better relationship, that's better. Because if you're just being around people that there's always this like something that you're not mentioning, it's not good. So we a lot of the relationships I had in my life, I had to have a lot of sit down conversations with people where I invite them over, I go there, and friends and family, where I said, okay, we need to hash these things out, we need to address all these things. What I basically decided was that every relationship needed to be reassessed, because I had realized just how much of my life was dictated by ritual and by standard. It just always was that way, and it will continue to be that way. And I hate that line of thinking. I hate it when the justification for something is, it just is. If there is a just reason for things being a certain way, that should be the reason. That reason. Not it being that way being the reason. Like, if you're friends with someone, it shouldn't just be because you've been friends with them forever. It should be because you enjoy them, you get along, you have mutual interests, stuff like that. But the moment you stop questioning why something is a way and you just accept that it is that way, it'll always be that way, that's where you get tradition, which can be good, but it can also be just unnecessary. And so I had a lot of serious conversations with a lot of people where I just had to hash it out with them and be like, look, this is the way it is, this is what we need to address, and that's what's gonna fucking happen. And a lot of my relationships changed. Some got more distant, some got closer, but they all got more honest, and that was the important thing. Now, that's pretty much for the bulk of 2017. Pretty much was dominated by puppy training and trying to get a handle on all that. It was pretty much just a lot of that, you know. There's I can't think of any huge deals that went on in 2017. We did do I guess that is okay, so 2018, 2017. Okay, so in 2016, I forgot to mention, we went up to visit here for Halloween, because Halloween is probably it is the house favorite holiday, not only for Bri and me, but also this household in general and the family in general. So we went up here for Halloween. It did not go quite as well as it could have, but that's neither here nor there. Everything's fine now. In 2017, we came up for Thanksgiving, which was awesome. Bri's stepmom makes this amazing, like, bacon covered turkey. I'd never heard of such a thing, but it is phenomenal. Anytime she gets any reason to cook, it's like a fucking Christmas again. It's amazing. So that's what happened in 2017. I think 2017 was it was either the Halloween visit or the Thanksgiving visit where Bri really started to say, like, I'm going to move back up here. This is where I want to live out my career and have a family and all that other stuff. And we basically mutually agreed that that's where we're going. Of course, Bree still needed to finish her degree, and we still needed to get everything together, and we had to save up money, obviously. But that's pretty much it for the bulk of 2017. 2018, let's go ahead and move it to that. In 2018, we had a lot of stuff with the dog figured out by this point, but not in the best of ways. The worst part about the stuff with the dog was that we lived in a small apartment. We didn't have a yard to ourselves. We were upstairs, so he had no room to run around and play. And I was working full time. Bree was working full time, going to school, and Aaron was kind of detached from it. He didn't do a lot of stuff with the dog. Like, he would play, but a lot of the time when Aaron came home, the dog would go fucking nuts, and so he'd be like, Jesus, okay, I'm leaving. So there was a detachment there, but yeah, the main thing was just trying to figure things out and making plans, because we knew that the 2018-2019 lease was going to basically be the last year we were in Kansas, because that would be the year that Bree graduated in 2019, and that would be the last year we really have any reason to stay here, as long as we could find a way to be up there. Because there was the idea of us staying down here, her getting some experience where it's cheaper to live, stuff like that. But we'll get kind of to that. 2018 was marked by Bree getting more work that worked towards her degree, stuff like that. Again, in August, I wound up leaving Days Inn after working there for over 2 years, it feels like. Yeah. Aaron was working at a company. I won't say what company because, well, I can say the first one, because he's not working for that company anymore. No, I still shouldn't. A security company that was licensed to do security at a shipping company, mail company, and they were in the process of shifting from one security company to the other, where the people who were working at those individual posts would be transitioned from one company to another, but a lot of people were just quitting, and a lot of people were not working at the post in general. And so Aaron, being a kind of an interim manager, he never really got the training he should have to have that position, which led to a lot of frustrating moments for him. He needed more people, and I would get more money working there for less hours. So it seemed like a good fit. It was longer days, longer shifts, but it would be far fewer shifts. So after 2.5 years of working at Days Inn, I left to help Aaron work at this other security company and to take fewer shifts. Turns out that my problem is not the amount of time I work, it is the amount of time all at once I work. Because the longer I am on my feet or at a place, the quicker, it's like exponential. My stamina goes, and then it just fucking nosedives after a certain amount of time. The company switches over to the new company, and I start contemplating perhaps doing setting up for a career in teaching. I was thinking about being a teacher. I actually started to go back to Johnson County Community College online this time. I'm not going to fucking make that trek again. To finish off my degree, because I had gone for 3 semesters at UMKC, 1 semester at Johnson County Community College. I had credits, and I looked at my degree check, and if I just did 2 semesters of relatively easy classes, most of which were electives, I could get a associate's degree. So that's always good to have. So I started going back to school, and at the time, our friend, Bree's best friend, and now also friend of me, Courtney, was working as a tutor at the local middle school. And they had another tutor position open, so she helped me get a job as a tutor. And so I was working as at the security company for a couple months, for eventually leaving because 12-hour shifts I just can't do. I cannot fucking do those. But I remained as a tutor through February when Bree and I had a series of conversations about where we wanted me to be, and how my physical and mental well-being was deteriorating. I don't have treatment. I don't have proper medication. I don't have therapy. I don't have any of those things. I know there are affordable options. Right now we can't afford the affordable options. We hope to be able to soon. But around this time, I was not doing good. And I had started to pick up a knack for doing chores around the house. You're cleaning, dishes, taking care of the dog, trash, all that other stuff, cleaning up. And the idea was proposed. I don't want it this. The way I say this will determine how it sounds. In part, at least. I had to be convinced that I would not be a burden or a waste or any of that other stuff by becoming a homemaker. Or I could stay at home, finish out my school stuff. Of course, this brings us into 2019, doesn't it? So yeah, it does. I had to be convinced that being a homemaker wouldn't be putting an unnecessary burden on Bree, that it wouldn't be undoing, and if it wouldn't be putting too much on her. She's the one that convinced me that working with my limitations, and that she wanted me because she really liked the fact that I was there every time she came home, that she could come home and not have to worry about doing any of the chores, and that she knew that if she needed help, I would be available. And that's still the mindset to this day. And at that time, we could kind of afford it. And fortunately, because of stuff I'll get to, but I want to address 2018. We came up here to visit a third time at this actual house. It was funny. Every year we came up to visit, it was a new house. First year was the house, and then that house burnt down and got rebuilt into a very similar looking house, but with slight differences. So the second year we went to that rebuilt house, and then the third year was this house. So it's like every time we came to visit, every year it was a new fucking house. But we came up here and we brought the dog with us because we just could not get a control of him. We could not continue to try to train him in a place where he's a very active breed. He needs somewhere to roam around. He needs a yard, or at least he needs people who aren't working all the fucking time to just dedicate hours of time to playing with him. Since I have arthritis in my ankles, I can't go on walks with him. And Bree sure shit doesn't have the time to do that between work and school. That, and when he does go on walks, all he does is fucking yank against the fucking leash, trying to go as fast as possible. And so he doesn't wind up actually getting anything other than fucking choking himself. So he needed a place to fucking run around. And we don't have that. We didn't have the space in Ottawa. It was proposed. Two things were proposed. The first was that we could, after Bree graduates, move up here and stay here for a short period of time so that we could get jobs arranged, save up as much money as possible for down payments on our own place. So basically be a stepping stone. Not a permanent place, not a place you stay for a long period of time, just a place, get here, get to work. Save up, get the fuck out. That type of deal. So that was proposed because they got a place that has the fucking basement and the space and whatever. The second thing that was proposed was that when we come up to visit for Christmas, that we would leave the dog here. I'm not saying his name because I don't want him to fucking freak out again. That he would stay here. They would work on trying to train him, calm him down a little bit, and then when we came up at the end of the summer, then we'd save up and then we'd take him with us when we move out. Now, a couple things with that. It didn't wind up happening. There was an unfortunate incident where he actually got out and I had a mental breakdown, and that was not handled well by anybody involved. They have since erected a fence and built onto the porch, so there's a whole bunch of areas so he can go out without fear of him running away or whatever, which is awesome. But he was just too destructive, and he was destroying stuff and chewing stuff and jumping all over people, clawing them and bruising people up, that we drove fucking 9 hours one way and 9 hours back in fucking winter. Again, driving north in the fucking winter, like that's a good idea, in the van, which at the time we hadn't got a lot fixed on it. I was still very uncertain about it, but we got there, we visited, stayed through to the new year, which brings us into 2019, and then left him here. And then 2 weeks later, it was like enough had been enough. Enough stuff was destroyed, enough bruises were incurred, that it was just like, nah, there was too much. So we wound up driving again, like that night. I remember being so fucking nervous and anxious about it because I knew the trip for Christmas well in advance, so I had time to mentally prepare for that. But like, I literally woke up one day, Bree came home from class, and then she was like, "Oh, you don't know yet," because I didn't see her text. We were leaving for Chicago that night, and she was gonna take a nap, and so I was literally laying in bed next to her, trying not to wake her up, having convulsions and stomach cramps from just how fucking scared I was. But eventually we drove up that night, picked him up, brought him back home, and then after that is when the homemaker transition happened, and then right after that is when I injured my back. That was in March. Herniated spinal disc. Had to go to the hospital twice, and I was declared too fat for surgery. The surgery was determined to not be necessary. They would rather me go to physical therapy, but I would get no help in paying for it, so I couldn't do that. So I essentially just had to rest, try to stretch at home, and lose weight. Maybe we'll be able to fix you then. So I couldn't have worked even if I was trying. Because I could barely get out of fucking bed. I couldn't clean myself. I couldn't take care of myself. It's days like this that I'm remembering why. So, then that leads us over the summer, where the goal was entirely save up money so we can move. We saved up just enough money to be able to rent the truck, and all the gas and expenses to get us up here. We actually wound up running just over budget, because we in gas, it was that tipped us just over budget, but we get it all figured out. It was fine. And that brought us up here. Aaron took ownership of the lease down there. He brought in Jesse as his roommate, and that's where they are still. Then we get up here, and it's when I realized just how little people are willing to even talk to a disabled person, because I keep trying to apply for jobs and only had 2 people actually reach out. One was an interview I arranged at my current employer, that I actually arranged the day we were loading the truck. I interviewed the Monday after we got here, we got here on a Saturday. But because of a bunch of corporate bullshit, I didn't actually wind up getting a job offer until like a month, like weeks after that. And I had also interviewed that same day at a different place, but in that time, what we came up here was with the plan of me applying for disability. And that was not to be, because it turns out that the amount you can get in disability is determined by how long you've worked. And seeing as how I haven't worked that long, only since 2013, if I did get on disability, which would have been a stretch anyway, you have the best chance of getting on disability in Illinois, but it was not to be. Even if I had gotten it, it would not have been near enough for us to be able to afford to live on it. But we didn't know that until later on. So I wasn't kicked into applying at all of the places mode until about a week or so after we got here, and we realized that the disability thing wasn't going to work. And that's when I realized how little people are willing to... It's equal opportunity to apply, not equal opportunity to be employed. Because only 2 places even took a look at me. That's my current employer and a place that did not actually look at my application before they brought me in for an interview. But about a month too late, I got a very part-time job at the place I'm working at now. Started training to get a manager position, and then more corporate bullshit came up. And during this time, it just looks like I'm not doing enough to get the jobs, and I had been applying at more places and yada yada. The point is, because of so many circumstances that were outside of my control, I did not wind up getting my current position, which is a manager position, until fucking like a month ago, and it's November. So just spent so much time trying to get the jobs and getting jerked around, but there's a whole bunch of shit about my current situation that is not suitable for online video. Not that it would be good to talk about it, whether it is suitable or not. The point is that's what's going on. Our current plan for the rest of the year, we have been looking at various places. Tomorrow we're looking at another place. We're hoping to be out by the end of November. And that means we would be starting 2020 in our own place, in a new state, under our own control. So that's essentially the past 10 years of my life skimmed heavily, but yeah, about 4 hours. So that's essentially where things have gone from 2010 to 2019. In 2010, I was living in Admire, Kansas with my mom, my dad, and my brother. I was a freshman in college, soon to be a college dropout. And I'm going to be starting 2020 a manager at a retail store in a totally different state in Chicago. I know Chicago's not the state. I'm in a suburb of Chicago, and in a relationship I've been in for almost 6 years with a dog, and with vastly different relationships to every person I've known since. I have moved so many different times. I've had so many different jobs. And pretty much the only constant thing I've been doing since then to now has been YouTube, which is really weird. In 2007 is when I made this channel, Deckerlink, and I've been making videos just independently since 2003. That's when I made my first one. It's before YouTube even existed, mind you. So, yeah, it's weird to think that in 2009, what I was doing is I started doing gaming stuff. I think I started doing gaming stuff maybe just before 2009, I don't know. Before that, I was trying to emulate the Vlogbrothers, or just talking about random shit. Not having any form focus or anything like that. I just enjoyed doing it and dreamed about what would happen if someone liked what I did. And now, ending the year at almost 7,000, I crossed 7,000 subscribers. Been bobbing up and down on it, but 7,000 subscribers, and I have been able to reach out to my audience for help on medical bills, and recently on housing costs. I know more people now that I'm close to than at any point. And I know what I want to do. 2009 was the year that I decided I want to be a voice actor, and now, 10 years later, as soon as we move out of here, I'll have a place where I can safely record without bothering anyone, or without being right next to machines or yappy dogs. I've got a good microphone. I've got experience, a movie credit. Yeah. So, yeah, that's been my takeaway. It's been a slow build on the one thing that has been a thing I've been doing for the past 10 years. It isn't where I thought I would be. There's no possible way I could have envisioned being in the physical, mental, whatever state I am right now back then. I had no plan in 2009. I had no idea where I was going. Yeah. So, what are some of your highlights and lowlights from 2010 to the 2019, the 20 teens? My biggest goals for the next decade are to have paid voice acting credits I can put on a resume, a demo reel. I want to definitely have crossed more subscribers. I'm not going to make a goal there, but I want to be a lot healthier. I need to lose a lot of weight. I need to get on a lot of medications. I need to go to various forms of therapy. I need to be better health-wise than I am now in 10 years. 10 years ago, I was still overweight. I didn't have arthritis in my ankles yet. I didn't have a herniated disc. I had many mental problems, not as many as I would eventually have, but my health is the biggest thing that needs to change in the next 10 years, by far. So yeah, thank you all very much for listening. If you made it to the end, like I said, let me know what your biggest highlights and lowlights are of the 20-teens, and very specifically, what were you doing on May 26th, or at least in May of 2015? May 2015, what were you doing? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't give context for your answer, just let me know what you were doing then. That way we'll know who put up with this long ass video. Now I'm gonna go try to take the pressure off my back a little bit. Then a little bit later on I'm gonna go to the store, and that'll be it for my day. Gonna look at an apartment tomorrow, and then I work Sunday. My store is getting together to have a fun get together with the whole store to do bowling. I'm really looking forward to that because I think that'll be really fun. I hope you reached all your goals for 2020 to 2029. I hope we're all still here by then. I never thought I would be. I never thought I would be in a long committed relationship. I thought I would have been dead by now. A lot of times I hoped for it. Both the long relationship and being dead. Had no idea. You imagine what I have no idea is about to happen? That's some ominous ways of talking about the future, but I suppose we'll see. Thank you all for watching, and until next time,